The man she humiliated in front of Manhattan's elite became the only person who could save her daughter's life. Scarlett Whitmore spent years building an empire on perfect judgment and ruthless control. One freezing November night, she looked at a soaked father carrying his sleeping child and decided he didn't belong in her world. She was wrong. 20 minutes later, that same man would be kneeling on her ballroom floor, his hands steady on her daughter's chest, while the city's wealthiest guests stood frozen in panic. Before we dive in, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get into it. The rain came down like punishment that November night in Manhattan. Scarlett Whitmore stood in the center of the Grand Lexington Hotel's ballroom, surveying her charity gala with the same cold precision she applied to everything else in her life. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors. Women in designer gowns drifted between stations of imported champagne and caviar. Men in $1,000 suits discussed mergers and acquisitions while pretending to care about homeless children. This was her world, controlled, predictable, safe. She'd built the Whitmore Group from the ground up after her husband died 6 years ago, transforming grief into the most powerful real estate empire in New York. At 30, she was already legendary. The press called her brilliant. Colleagues called her ruthless. Both were right. Tonight's event was raising money for children's housing programs, and Scarlett had orchestrated every detail personally. The 16-piece orchestra, the ice sculptures, the carefully curated guest list of people wealthy enough to write six-figure checks without thinking twice. She smoothed her black Valentino gown and checked her watch. 7:45. The keynote speech would begin at 8, followed by the silent auction, then, "Mommy, can I go play with the decorations?" Scarlett looked down at her daughter. Ava was 7 years old, small for her age, with dark curls that never stayed in their clips and eyes that held too much sadness for a child. She wore a velvet dress Scarlett had picked out, though Ava had already managed to get chocolate on the sleeve. "We talked about this," Scarlett said quietly. "You need to stay close to me tonight. This is important." "Everything's always important," Ava muttered. The word stung, but Scarlett didn't let it show. She couldn't afford to. Not here. Not with 300 guests watching her every move, waiting for any sign of weakness they could exploit. "Ava, I know. The little girl sighed dramatically. "Stand up straight. Don't touch anything. Smile when people talk to me." Scarlett felt something crack inside her chest, but she pushed it down the way she always did. There would be time later to be a better mother. Right now, she had a company to protect and a reputation to maintain. "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart." Ava nodded, but her eyes had already gone distant. That look killed Scarlett every time she saw it. The look that said her daughter was learning to expect nothing from her. Before she could say anything else, Richard Chen appeared at her elbow. Her head of development was sweating despite the air conditioning, his bow tie slightly crooked. "We have a situation," he said quietly. Scarlett's jaw tightened. "What kind of situation?" "There's a man at the entrance. Says he's here about the medical assistance programs. Security won't let him in because he's not on the list, but he's refusing to leave. He has a child with him." "Then have security escort him out." "They tried. He's being persistent." Scarlett felt her patience evaporate. She'd spent 3 months planning this event. She'd dealt with caterers, florists, an incompetent event coordinator, and a venue manager who tried to double his fees 2 weeks before the gala. She'd handled donors with impossible demands, and board members who questioned every expense. She was not going to let some random person crash her event. "I'll handle it," she said. Richard looked relieved. "Thank you. He's near the coat check." Scarlett moved through the crowd with practiced grace, smiling and nodding at guests, while her mind calculated the fastest way to deal with this problem and get back to the schedule. She could see the entrance now, where 2 security guards in black suits stood blocking someone from view. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who owned half of Manhattan. "What's going on here?" The security guard stepped aside, and Scarlett got her first look at the problem. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that was wet from the rain outside. His jacket was worn at the elbows, and his jeans had seen better days. Work boots that had actually seen work, not the expensive kind men wore to look rugged on weekends. He looked exhausted. Not just tired, exhausted in a way that went bone deep. And in his arms, He was carrying a little girl. She was maybe 5 years old, asleep with her head on his shoulder. Someone had wrapped her in a jacket that was too big for her, probably his. Her cheeks were flushed with fever, and even from 6 feet away, Scarlett could hear the wheeze in her breathing. For just a moment, something shifted in Scarlett's chest. Then she looked at his boots again, at the frayed edges of his collar, and the moment passed. "Sir, I'm Scarlett Whitmore," she said, her voice polite but firm. "I'm hosting this event. Can I help you with something?" The man shifted the little girl in his arms, careful not to wake her. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, rough around the edges. "I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am. My name's Mason Reed. I saw the flyer for this event. It mentioned programs for medical assistance for kids. My daughter Ellie, she's got lung problems, chronic bronchitis that keeps coming back. I've been trying to find help, and I thought maybe—" "This is a private event," Scarlett interrupted. "The programs we're raising money for tonight are administered through the city. You'll need to apply through the proper channels." "I did apply 3 months ago. I haven't heard anything back." "Then I'm sure someone will contact you when they process your application." Mason's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed level. "Ma'am, I've been calling every week. Nobody returns my calls. I work construction. I can't afford to take time off to sit in government offices all day. When I saw this event was happening tonight, I thought maybe if I could just talk to someone for 5 minutes. This is not the appropriate venue for that conversation." Scarlett could feel people starting to notice the commotion. Heads turning. Whispers starting. This was exactly what she didn't need. "I understand your situation is difficult, but you can't simply show up at a private fundraiser without an invitation. I'm not trying to crash your party. I just want help for my daughter. And I just explained how you can get that help, through the proper channels." Something flickered in Mason's eyes. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Recognition, maybe? Like he'd seen this exact brand of dismissal before and knew exactly what it meant. "Right," he said quietly. "The proper channels. Of course." He adjusted Ellie in his arms again, and Scarlett noticed his hands were rough, scarred in places. Working hands. Hands that had seen real labor, not the symbolic kind performed in corner offices. She pushed the observation aside. "Security will show you out," she said, then turned to the guards. "Please escort Mr. Reed to the exit. Politely." "Yes, ma'am." Mason didn't argue. He just looked at Scarlett for one more long moment, and in that look she saw something that made her deeply uncomfortable. Not resentment, not rage, just a kind of tired disappointment, like he'd expected better and should have known not to. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, one hand cradling his daughter's head to keep it steady against his shoulder. Scarlett watched him go, telling herself she'd made the right call. This was a fundraising event, not a walk-in clinic. There were procedures for this kind of thing. Applications, processes, order. She'd built her entire life on order. Richard appeared again, looking nervous. "Is everything okay?" "It's fine, just someone who didn't understand the nature of the event. Should we increase security in case he tries to come back?" "That won't be necessary. He's not going to cause trouble." She said it with absolute certainty, and even as the words left her mouth, she wondered why she was so sure. Something about the way Mason had carried his daughter, maybe. The careful gentleness in how he held her, like she was made of something precious and fragile. Scarlett shook off the thought and turned back toward the ballroom. The gala was running perfectly now. Guests mingled and laughed. The orchestra played Vivaldi. Waiters circulated with hors d'oeuvres that cost more per plate than most people's grocery bills. This was what success looked like. This was what she'd built. So why did she feel like she'd just failed some kind of test? "Mommy?" Ava was tugging at her dress, and Scarlett realized she'd been standing still for too long, staring at nothing. "Yes, sweetheart?" "I don't feel good." Scarlett's attention snapped back into focus. She knelt down, pressing her palm to Ava's forehead. A little warm, but not concerning. Probably just tired and overwhelmed by the crowd. "We'll go home soon," she promised. "Just a few more hours." Ava nodded, but she looked pale. Scarlett made a mental note to keep an eye on her and stood back up, smoothing her dress. 8 o'clock arrived. Time for the keynote speech. Scarlett moved to the small stage at one end of the ballroom, accepting the microphone from the event coordinator. 300 faces turned toward her, expectant and evaluating, She'd given hundreds of speeches. This should have been easy. But as she opened her mouth to begin, her eyes caught on the entrance where Mason Reed had stood 15 minutes ago. The space was empty now, but she could still see him there in her mind. That worn jacket, those tired eyes, the little girl with the labored breathing tucked against his chest. She forced herself to focus. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight." Her voice was steady, professional. She talked about the housing crisis facing New York's children, the programs her foundation was supporting, the difference they could make together, all the right words in all the right order. The audience applauded politely. Scarlett continued, hitting every point she'd rehearsed. Statistics about homeless youth, success stories from previous programs, the importance of community investment. She was halfway through the closing remarks when she heard a sound that didn't belong. A thud, soft but distinct. She looked up from her notes and saw people turning, murmuring. Someone near the back of the crowd had dropped something, maybe. Or then she saw Ava. Her daughter was on the floor. Everything after that happened in fragments, disconnected and too fast to process. Scarlett, dropping the microphone. The feedback screech cutting through the ballroom. Her heels skidding on marble as she ran. People scattering, backing away from where Ava lay crumpled like a broken doll. "Ava!" Scarlett hit her knees beside her daughter, and the impact sent pain shooting through her legs, but she didn't feel it. Ava's eyes were half open, unfocused. Her lips were turning blue. "Someone call 911. Scarlett's voice came out shredded, unrecognizable. "Call an ambulance!" She grabbed Ava's shoulders, trying to remember first aid, trying to remember anything useful, but her mind had gone completely blank. All she could see was her daughter's face losing color. All she could hear was the horrible rasp of Ava struggling to breathe. The crowd pressed closer, everyone staring, nobody helping. "Give her space," someone shouted. "Is she breathing? What happened? Someone do something." But nobody moved. 300 of the city's wealthiest, most powerful people, and they all just stood there like they were watching a play, frozen, useless. Scarlett felt panic climbing up her throat, choking her. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. "Ava, baby, stay with me. Please stay with me." Her daughter's eyes were closing. "No, no, no! Ava!" Then someone was pushing through the crowd. Scarlett barely registered it at first. Just movement at the edge of her vision, someone shoving past the frozen guests with enough force to make them stumble. "Move!" It was a man's voice, rough, commanding, and somehow familiar. Scarlett looked up through tears and saw Mason Reed dropping to his knees on the other side of Ava. The man she'd had thrown out 15 minutes ago. The man whose daughter was now standing behind him, no longer asleep, watching with frightened eyes. "What's her name?" Mason's voice cut through Scarlett's panic like a blade. Ava. Her name is Ava." "How old?" 7. "Any medical conditions I should know about?" Scarlett's mind was fragmenting, but she forced herself to focus. "Heart arrhythmia. She takes medication, but did she take it today?" I don't know. I think so. I'm not sure." Mason nodded once, then his hands were on Ava's neck, checking her pulse. His movements were fast but controlled, nothing wasted. "Ava, can you hear me?" he said, his voice somehow both firm and gentle. "I need you to try to breathe for me, sweetheart. Nice and slow." Ava's eyes fluttered open slightly. The blue tinge around her lips was getting worse. Scarlett heard herself making sounds that weren't quite words. Whimpers, sobs. She couldn't breathe either, couldn't think. "Ma'am," Mason's eyes locked onto hers. "I need you to stay calm. Your daughter needs you calm right now. Can you do that for her?" It was like being slapped. Scarlett sucked in a breath, forced herself to nod. "Good. Now listen to me. I'm going to stabilize her until the paramedics get here. I need you to keep talking to her. Tell her she's safe. Tell her you're right here. Can you do that?" Scarlett nodded again, reaching for Ava's hand. Her daughter's fingers were so cold. "I'm here, baby. Mommy's here. You're going to be okay." Mason had tilted Ava's head back slightly, checking her airway. "Someone get me a jacket," he called out without looking up. "Something I can fold under her head." 3 people immediately started taking off their jackets. Richard Chen was fastest, handing over a designer blazer that probably cost $3,000. Mason folded it quickly and slipped it under Ava's head, elevating her slightly. "Where's that ambulance?" They said 6 minutes, someone answered. Tell them to make it 4. There was authority in his voice that made people move. Scarlett watched in a kind of daze as this man, this stranger she'd dismissed and humiliated, took control of the entire situation with the kind of calm competence that only came from doing this before. Many times before. Ava, I need you to look at me, Mason was saying. That's it. Good girl. Now we're going to breathe together, okay? In through your nose, out through your mouth, just like blowing bubbles. Can you do that? Ava managed a tiny nod. Okay, here we go. Breathe in. He demonstrated, exaggerating the breath so Ava could see it. And out. Ava tried. The breath came out rattling and weak, but it came out. Perfect. Let's do it again. Scarlett watched her daughter's face, terrified, as Mason counted breaths. In and out. In and out. Slowly, painfully slowly, some color started returning to Ava's cheeks. That's my girl, Mason murmured. You're doing great. Behind him, his own daughter stood clutching the oversized jacket around her shoulders. She looked scared, but not panicked. Like maybe she'd seen her father do this kind of thing before, too. How long now? Mason asked. 3 minutes, Richard answered. Good. Mason checked Ava's pulse again, counted silently. Rhythm's stabilizing. You're doing so good, Ava. Just keep breathing with me. Scarlett realized she was crying, tears running down her face, dripping onto the marble floor. She couldn't remember the last time she'd cried in public. Maybe never. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, thank you. Save it until she's in the ambulance, Mason said, not unkindly. Right now, just keep her calm. So Scarlett did. She held Ava's hand and stroked her hair and told her she loved her, over and over, until the words lost meaning and became just sound. Just comfort. The ambulance arrived in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Paramedics burst through the ballroom entrance with a stretcher and equipment, and Mason smoothly stepped back, giving them room to work. He stayed close, though, ready to jump back in if needed. 7-year-old female, suspected cardiac arrhythmia, he reported quickly. Lost consciousness approximately 8 minutes ago. Cyanosis around the lips, irregular pulse, labored breathing, stabilized her airway and maintained steady breathing for the last 5 minutes. Pulse is currently 98, rhythm irregular but improving. One of the paramedics looked at him with surprise. You medical? Was. Army medic, 3 tours. The paramedic nodded and turned back to Ava, fitting an oxygen mask over her face. Okay, sweetheart, we're going to get you feeling better. They loaded Ava onto the stretcher quickly, efficiently. Scarlett started to follow, but one of the paramedics stopped her. Ma'am, are you her mother? Yes. You can ride with us. Just you, though. Scarlett nodded, then turned to Richard. Cancel everything. Handle the guests. I don't care how— Already on it, Richard said. Go. She started toward the ambulance, then stopped, turned back. Mason was standing there with his daughter, watching. His jacket was rumpled and there was sweat on his forehead, but his breathing was steady, controlled. He'd just saved her daughter's life. And 2 hours ago, Scarlett had looked at him and decided he wasn't worth 5 minutes of her time. The words stuck in her throat. Everything she wanted to say seemed impossibly inadequate. I don't know how to thank you. Mason's expression didn't change. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You saved her. Ma'am, we need to go, the paramedic interrupted. Scarlett looked at Ava on the stretcher, at the oxygen mask fogging with each breath, and the gratitude in her chest turned into something that hurt worse. I'm sorry, she said to Mason. For earlier, Your daughter needs you, Mason said quietly. We can talk later. Then the paramedics were moving, and Scarlett had to run to keep up. She climbed into the back of the ambulance, taking Ava's small hand in both of hers. The doors slammed shut. Through the back window, Scarlett caught one last glimpse of the grand Lexington ballroom. The beautiful people in their beautiful clothes, standing around looking shocked and uncomfortable. The shattered pieces of her perfect event scattered across marble floors. And at the edge of the crowd, Mason Reed holding his daughter's hand and watching the ambulance pull away. The man she'd judged in the rain, the man who'd come back anyway. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Scarlett sat in a plastic chair that was slightly too small, still wearing her gala dress, and stared at the wall. Someone had brought her coffee an hour ago. It sat untouched on the table beside her, cold and forgotten. Doctors had taken Ava back immediately. Tests, monitoring, all the words Scarlett had heard before during Ava's previous episodes, but never quite like this. Never this serious. She kept replaying the moment. Ava falling. The sound of her body hitting the floor. Those blue lips. And everyone just standing there. Everyone except the man Scarlett had humiliated and dismissed. Miss Whitmore? She looked up. A doctor in pale blue scrubs stood in front of her, and Scarlett's heart stopped. Is she? Ava's stable, the doctor said quickly. She's resting now. You can see her in a few minutes. The relief was so intense it felt like drowning. Scarlett put her head in her hands and breathed until the room stopped spinning. What happened? She managed. The doctor sat down beside her, clipboard resting on his knees. Ava had a severe arrhythmia episode. Basically, her heart rhythm became dangerously irregular. Combined with stress and possibly missing her medication this morning, it caused her to lose consciousness. Without immediate intervention, it could have been much worse. But she's okay now? For now, yes. We've stabilized her rhythm and will keep her overnight for observation. But Ms. Whitmore, we need to talk about her long-term treatment plan. These episodes are getting more frequent. Scarlett nodded numbly. More appointments. More specialists. More juggling her schedule between board meetings and hospital visits while trying to convince herself she was being a good mother. The paramedics mentioned someone at the scene provided immediate care, the doctor continued. Kept her airway open, maintained steady breathing until they arrived. That probably saved her life. His name is Mason Reed. Do you have his contact information? I'd like to thank him personally. Scarlett realized she didn't. She'd thrown him out of her event and then watched him save her daughter's life. And she didn't even have a phone number. I'll find it, she said. The doctor stood. You can go see Ava now. Room 412. Just remember she needs rest, so try to keep things calm. Thank you. Scarlett walked to Ava's room on autopilot. Her heels clicked against linoleum floors, too loud in the quiet hallway. Through windows, she could see the city lights, Manhattan glowing like always. The world kept turning even when yours fell apart. Room 412 was at the end of the hall. Scarlett pushed open the door and saw her daughter lying in a hospital bed that was too big for her. Ava looked tiny under the white sheets, hooked up to monitors that beeped softly in the darkness. Her eyes were closed. Scarlett pulled a chair close to the bed and took Ava's hand. Hi, baby. Ava's eyes opened slowly. Mommy? I'm here. I'm right here. What happened? You got sick at the party, but you're okay now. The doctors say you're going to be fine. Ava nodded slightly, processing. I remember falling, and then there was a man. He helped me breathe. That's right. His name is Mr. Reed. He was nice. Ava's voice was drowsy, medication making her drift. He talked to me like I was a real person, not like other grown-ups. The words hit Scarlett like a punch. What do you mean? Other grown-ups always talk weird to kids, like we're stupid or something. But he just talked normal. Scarlett thought about Mason's voice in the ballroom, firm but respectful, giving Ava instructions like she was capable of understanding them, because she was. He seems like a good person, Scarlett said quietly. You should say thank you to him. I will. And maybe, Ava yawned, maybe he could come visit sometime. He has a daughter. I saw her. She looked nice. Maybe, Scarlett agreed, though the idea made her chest tight with something she couldn't name. We'll see. Ava's eyes drifted closed again. Within minutes, she was asleep. Scarlett sat there in the dark, listening to monitors beep and watching her daughter breathe. Each breath steady and strong now, but Scarlett couldn't stop thinking about how close they'd come. How easily this night could have ended differently. Her phone buzzed. Text messages flooding in, Richard updating her on the gala's aftermath. Board members expressing concern, friends asking if she needed anything. Scarlett turned the phone off. For the first time in 6 years, work could wait. She stayed in that hospital room until sunrise, watching Ava sleep, and thinking about a man in a worn jacket who taught her daughter how to breathe. 1. Scarlett left the hospital at 8 the next morning. Ava was sleeping peacefully, and the doctors assured her there was no reason to stay. They'd keep monitoring overnight, but everything looked stable. Scarlett could go home, shower, change, get some rest. She did none of those things. Instead, she went to her office. The Whitmore Group headquarters occupied 43 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Scarlett's office was on the top floor with windows overlooking Central Park and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. She walked past her secretary, who looked surprised to see her, and closed herself in her office. Then she made a phone call. "David, it's Scarlett. I need you to run a complete background check on someone." David Martinez was her head of security and investigations. Former FBI. The best in the business. "Name, quoi?" he asked. "Mason Reed. I don't have much information. He's about 32, works construction, lives somewhere in the Bronx. He has a daughter named Ellie, around 5 years old." "What am I looking for?" Scarlett paused. What was she looking for? Proof that he was a good person? Proof that he wasn't? Absolution for her own behavior? "Everything," she said finally. "I want to know who he is." "Give me 4 hours." David called back in 3. Scarlett was reviewing contracts when her phone rang, but she dropped everything immediately. "What did you find?" "Quite a bit, actually. Mason Christopher Reed, 32 years old, born in Georgia, enlisted in the Army at 18. Became a combat medic, served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Highly decorated, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Army Commendation Medal. Left the service 4 years ago with an honorable discharge." Scarlett was taking notes, her hand moving automatically. "Why did he leave?" "His wife died. Cancer. She was diagnosed while he was on his 2nd tour but didn't tell him until he came home. By then it was stage 4. She lived 6 months after diagnosis." The pen stopped moving. Reed left the Army to take care of their daughter full-time. He's worked a series of construction jobs since then, nothing permanent. Currently employed by Bronx Building Services, doing commercial renovation work. Income approximately $48,000 a year. Scarlett thought about the medical bills for a child with chronic lung problems. How far $48,000 wouldn't stretch. What about his daughter? Ellie Reed, 5 years old, diagnosed with chronic bronchitis at age 2. Multiple hospitalizations for respiratory infections. She's been in and out of emergency rooms 6 times in the past year alone. And the mother's family? Are they helping? Wife was an orphan, no extended family. Reed's parents are deceased. His sister lives in California, sends money when she can, but she's got her own kids. For all practical purposes, he's doing this alone. Scarlett stared at her notes. 3 tours in Afghanistan, a dying wife, a sick daughter. And somehow Mason Reed had held it together, kept working, kept going. "Anything else?" she asked. "One more thing. I checked his application for the Children's Medical Assistance Program. He applied 4 months ago. It's been sitting in processing the entire time. No one's even looked at it." "Why not?" "I made some calls. Apparently the program's backlogged. They're understaffed and overwhelmed. Applications from families making over $40,000 a year get deprioritized because technically they're above the poverty line." "That's insane. $48,000 in New York might as well be poverty." "I'm just telling you what I found." Scarlett thanked him and hung up. Then she sat in her expensive chair in her expensive office and thought about a man carrying his daughter through the rain, trying to get help from people who didn't care. People like her. She'd looked at Mason Reed and seen everything she'd spent her life avoiding. The mess, the struggle, the reminder that no amount of money or power could protect you from the fundamental unfairness of the world. So she'd looked away, and he'd saved her daughter anyway. Scarlett picked up her phone again and dialed her secretary. "Jenny, I need an address for someone. Mason Reed lives in the Bronx. Get it to me as soon as possible." "Of course. Is this for a delivery?" "No," Scarlett said quietly. "I'm going to visit him personally." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Scarlett never visited anyone personally. She had people for that. "Right away, Miss Whitmore." 20 minutes later, Scarlett had an address written on a sticky note. She stared at it for a long moment, then stood up. She had no idea what she was going to say when she got there, but she was going anyway. The address took Scarlett to a neighborhood she'd only ever seen from highway overpasses. The Bronx looked different at street level. Graffiti-tagged buildings squatted between bodegas with hand-painted signs. Chain-link fences enclosed patches of concrete that optimistic people called playgrounds. Children played in the streets because there was nowhere else to go. Scarlett's Mercedes stood out like a diamond in a coal mine. She parallel parked in front of a 5-story walk-up with crumbling brick facade and windows covered in security bars. According to the address, Mason Reed lived in apartment 3C. For a long moment, she just sat in her car with the engine running. What was she doing here? She could have sent flowers to the hospital with a thank you card. She could have made a donation to the medical assistance program in his name. She could have done a dozen things that didn't require coming to the Bronx and facing the man whose life she judged in 30 seconds. But none of those things felt like enough. Scarlett turned off the engine and got out. The building's front door was propped open with a brick. Inside, the hallway smelled like cooking oil and mildew. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. The elevator had an out-of-order sign taped to it that looked at least a year old. She took the stairs. By the 3rd floor, Scarlett was breathing hard. She spent an hour every morning on a Peloton in her climate-controlled home gym, but apparently that didn't prepare you for actual stairs and actual buildings where actual people lived. Apartment 3C was at the end of the hall. Scarlett stood in front of the door for a full minute before she knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. Relief and disappointment hit her in equal measure. He wasn't home. She could leave, tell herself she'd tried, go back to her office and her meetings and her carefully controlled life. Then she heard footsteps inside. The door opened 6 inches, held by a chain lock. Through the gap, Scarlett saw Mason Reed looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Miss Whitmore," he said. Not a question, just acknowledgement. "Mr. Reed, She paused, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she must look. Designer coat, heels that cost $800, standing in a hallway that probably hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the 90s. "I wanted to talk to you about last night." Mason studied her for a moment, then closed the door. Scarlett heard the chain slide free. When the door opened again, it was all the way. "Come in." The apartment was smaller than Scarlett's walk-in closet. One main room served as living room, dining room, and kitchen combined. A counter with 2 stools separated the kitchen area from the rest. A sagging couch faced a TV that looked older than Ellie. Drawings covered every available wall space, crayon pictures of houses and flowers and stick figure families. But the place was clean, obsessively clean, every surface scrubbed, everything in its place. The kind of clean that came from someone who understood that control over your environment was sometimes the only control you had. Scarlett understood that impulse intimately. "Ellie's at daycare," Mason said, answering the question she hadn't asked. "I've got about an hour before I need to pick her up." He didn't invite her to sit, just stood there in jeans and a faded t-shirt, waiting. "How's your daughter?" he asked. "Stable. The doctors are keeping her overnight for observation, but they think she'll be fine." Scarlett paused. "Because of you." Mason shrugged. "I did what anyone would have done." "No, you did what no one else did. 300 people were in that ballroom, and you were the only one who moved. Most people freeze in emergencies. It's normal. You didn't freeze." "I've had practice." The words came out flat, factual. Scarlett thought about what David had told her. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Combat medic. How many times had Mason Reed held someone's life in his hands while chaos erupted around him? "I know about your service record," she said quietly. "I had someone look into your background. I'm sorry if that feels invasive, but I needed to understand who you are." Something flickered in Mason's eyes. "And what did you find out?" "That you're a decorated veteran who saved lives in war zones for years. That you left the army to take care of your daughter after your wife died. That you've been trying to get help for Ellie's medical bills, and the system's been ignoring you. So now you know I'm not some random person trying to crash your party." The words weren't cruel, but they landed like a slap anyway. "I'm sorry," Scarlett said, "for how I treated you last night, for assuming—" She stopped, made herself say it clearly. "For looking at you and deciding you didn't belong there. That was wrong." Mason crossed his arms. "You want to know what the worst part was? It wasn't getting kicked out. I've been kicked out of better places. It was the way you looked at me, like I was invisible, like I didn't matter enough to even really see." Scarlett felt heat rising in her face. "You're right. I didn't see you. I saw your jacket and your boots, and I made a decision about who you were based on that. It was cruel and it was stupid, and I'm sorry. Why are you here, Ms. Whitmore? To apologize, and she hesitated. This next part was harder. To offer you a job. Mason's expression didn't change. A job. I'm developing a major housing project, the Meridian Complex. Affordable housing with an integrated children's medical center. We're looking for someone to oversee safety operations, make sure everything's up to code, that contractors aren't cutting corners. It's a real position with real responsibility. $65,000 salary, full benefits, medical coverage for dependents. She'd rehearsed this speech in the car. It had sounded better then. Mason was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very calm. So this is guilt. What? You feel bad about last night, so you're offering me charity dressed up as a job. Make yourself feel better about being cruel to the poor veteran. That's not... Scarlett stopped. Okay, maybe partly, but I wouldn't offer you a position you're not qualified for. I looked at your record. You spent years in the military making life or death decisions under pressure. You know construction. You understand safety protocols. And based on what I saw last night, you don't panic when things go wrong. That's exactly what I need. You don't even know me. I know you showed up to a charity event you weren't invited to because you were desperate enough to try anything to help your daughter. I know you came back into a room full of people who just humiliated you because a child needed help. And I know you kept a 7-year-old girl alive until paramedics arrived when everyone else was useless. That tells me enough. Mason walked to the window and stared out at the street below. Scarlett waited, trying not to notice how threadbare the carpet was, or how the ceiling had water stains in one corner. I appreciate the offer, Mason said finally, but I don't need your pity. This isn't pity. This is me recognizing talent when I see it and trying to fix a mistake. What mistake? Kicking me out of your party? No. The mistake would be letting you walk away now. I built my company by finding people who are better at things than I am and giving them room to work. You're better at keeping people alive in crisis situations than anyone I've ever met. I'm offering you a chance to use that. Mason turned to look at her. And what do you get out of this? Someone I can trust to make sure my project doesn't kill anyone. You could hire any safety consultant in New York. I could, but they'd see it as a job. You'd see it as lives you're protecting. There's a difference. The silence stretched out. Somewhere in the building, a baby was crying. A door slammed, life continuing in all its messy, complicated ways. I need to think about it, Mason said. Take your time. Here's my card. Scarlett pulled it from her purse and set it on the counter. My personal cell number is on the back. Call me when you decide. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, your daughter was right. Mason frowned. About what? Ava told me this morning that you talked to her like a real person last night. Not the way most adults talk to children. She said you were nice. Scarlett met his eyes. She was right. You were kind to her when you had every reason not to be. After how I treated you, you could have walked away. You didn't. So thank you. Not just for saving her life, but for being decent when you didn't have to be. She left before he could respond. Walking down those 3 flights of stairs, Scarlett felt lighter somehow. Like she'd been carrying something heavy and finally set it down. She didn't know if Mason would take the job. Part of her hoped he would. Part of her thought maybe he shouldn't, that she was dragging him into a world that would grind him down the same way it had ground down everyone else. But she'd made the offer. The rest was up to him. Her phone rang as she reached her car. Richard Chen. The board wants an emergency meeting about last night, he said without preamble. Apparently some guests are concerned about the optics. A child collapsing at a charity gala doesn't look good. Scarlett closed her eyes. Of course. She'd almost lost her daughter, but what really mattered was how it looked to donors. Schedule it for tomorrow afternoon, she said. I'll be there. How's Ava doing? Better. Thanks for asking. She hung up and drove back to Manhattan, back to her gleaming office tower, back to the world where everything had a price and nothing was quite real. But she kept thinking about that apartment in the Bronx, the drawings on the walls, the clean floors and careful order, the way Mason Reed had looked at her when she apologized, like he was trying to decide if she actually meant it. She'd meant it. She just hoped he believed her. 3 days passed before Mason called. Scarlett was in a budget meeting when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, saw the unfamiliar number, and almost ignored it. Then something made her look twice. "Excuse me," she said, standing abruptly. "I need to take this." She stepped into the hallway and answered, "This is Scarlett Whitmore." "Ms. Whitmore, it's Mason Reed." Her heart kicked up without her permission. "Mr. Reed, have you made a decision? I want to see the project first. The Meridian Complex. Before I commit to anything, I need to know what I'd be getting into." "Of course. When are you free?" "I work until 5 most days, but I've got Saturday off." "Saturday works. I'll pick you up at 9. I can meet you there." "I insist. Consider it part of the interview process." She heard him exhale, almost a laugh. "All right, 9 o'clock. Scarlett hung up and realized she was smiling. When was the last time she'd smiled about a work call? Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Scarlett drove to the Bronx in jeans and a sweater instead of her usual business attire. It felt strange, dressing like a normal person. She couldn't remember the last time she'd worn jeans to anything work-related. Mason was waiting outside his building when she pulled up. He'd dressed carefully, clean jacket, newer jeans, work boots that had been scrubbed recently, making an effort. Scarlett appreciated that more than she expected to. "Morning," he said, climbing into the passenger seat. "Morning. Coffee?" She handed him a cup from the holder. He took it with a nod of thanks, and they drove in comfortable silence toward the construction site. The Meridian Complex occupied 4 acres in a part of Brooklyn that was slowly gentrifying. Eventually, it would house 200 families in mixed-income apartments, plus a community center, medical clinic, and children's programs. Right now, it was mostly steel framework and construction equipment. Scarlett parked near the site office and grabbed 2 hard hats from the trunk. "Fair warning," she said, handing one to Mason. "It's still early stages. You'll have to use your imagination." They walked through the chain-link gate into organized chaos. Workers shouted to each other over the noise of machinery. Concrete trucks rumbled past. Somewhere someone was welding, sending up showers of sparks. Mason's entire demeanor changed the moment they entered the site. His eyes moved constantly, cataloging everything. The placement of equipment, the safety barriers, the workers' gear. Scarlett watched him absorb information like a computer processing data. "What's your timeline?" he asked. 18 months to completion. We're about 4 months in." "Who's your general contractor?" "Bronx Building Services, actually. Same company you work for." Mason glanced at her. "Small world." "I didn't know that when I made the offer, but it means you already know some of the crew. That could be helpful." They walked deeper into the site. Scarlett explained the layout, where the apartments would be, where the medical center would go, how the community spaces would integrate with the residential areas. Mason listened but didn't say much, just observed. Then he stopped. "What?" Scarlett asked. Mason was staring at a section of exposed framework. "Those aren't the right supports." "What do you mean?" "These vertical supports. They're using grade 36 steel. Plans call for grade 50. He pointed to a marking on one of the beams. "See? Wrong specification." Scarlett pulled out her phone and opened the digital blueprints. Mason was right. The plans clearly specified grade 50 steel for all vertical load-bearing structures. "Could be a mistake," she said. "Wrong delivery, maybe." "Maybe." Mason didn't sound convinced. "But grade 36 is cheaper than grade 50, and if I can spot this in 5 minutes, there are probably other substitutions I can't see yet." A cold feeling settled in Scarlett's stomach. She'd worked with enough contractors to know what corner cutting looked like. But this project had been carefully vetted. They'd hired one of the most reputable firms in the city. "I need to talk to the site manager," she said. They found him in the office trailer, a heavy man named Doug Kellerman who'd been in construction for 30 years. He looked less than thrilled to see Scarlett. "Ms. Whitmore, didn't expect you today." "Doug, I need you to explain something to me. Why are you using grade 36 steel on the vertical supports when the plans specify grade 50? Doug's face went carefully blank. "I'd need to check with the engineer on that. Probably an approved substitution." "Approved by who?" "The project engineer. All changes go through him." "Get him on the phone." "He's not available on Saturdays." "Then get him available. This is a $4 million project and you're using substandard materials. I want an explanation now." Doug's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, Ms. Whitmore, I've been doing this for 3 decades. I know what I'm doing. Then you know that grade 36 steel has a yield strength of 36,000 pounds per square inch, and grade 50 has 50,000. You know that using the wrong grade on load-bearing structures could lead to catastrophic failure. And you know that if this building collapses because you cut corners, people will die. So I'm going to ask you one more time, why are you using the wrong materials? The silence in that trailer was absolute. Doug stood slowly. He was a big man and he used his size deliberately, trying to intimidate. Scarlett didn't flinch. "I think you should leave," Doug said. "Before you make accusations, you can't back up." Mason had been quiet this whole time, standing near the door. Now he spoke. "She can back them up. I counted 17 beams with the wrong specs on a 10-minute walk. You want me to document all of them? Because I can. I've got a pretty good memory for this stuff." Doug's face went red. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who knows what corner cutting looks like, and someone who's really curious about where the money for the proper materials went." For a second, Scarlett thought Doug might take a swing at Mason. Then the older man seemed to deflate. "You want to make a big deal out of this? Fine. Talk to the owner, talk to the engineer. But you're going to find out that everyone signed off on these changes. Everyone." He grabbed his jacket. "I'm done for the day. Lock up when you leave." He shoved past them and out of the trailer. Scarlett and Mason stood in silence, listening to Doug's truck roar to life and peel out of the parking lot. "Well," Scarlett said finally, "that was enlightening." "Everyone signed off on it," Mason repeated. "That's what he said." "Which means this goes higher than one site manager." "How high?" Scarlett thought about the project structure. The contractors reported to the project engineer. The engineer reported to the development director. The development director reported to the board. And overseeing the entire board was Gregory Hale, the project's primary investor, and one of the most powerful men in New York real estate. "Potentially very high," she said quietly. Mason walked to the filing cabinet and started pulling folders. "We need to document everything, every material substitution, every change order, every approval. If someone's running a fraud scheme, there'll be a paper trail. Or they've been smart enough to hide it. Nobody's that smart. People always make mistakes." He spread blueprints across the desk. "Help me cross-reference these. I'll list the actual materials being used. You check them against the plans." They worked for 3 hours. What they found made Scarlett's blood run cold. The steel wasn't the only substitution. Electrical wiring was undersized. Fire suppression systems used cheaper components. Insulation materials didn't meet fire safety codes. Even the concrete mix had been altered to use less cement and more filler. Every change saved money. Every change made the building less safe. And every change had been approved and signed off by the project engineer, stamped with official documentation. "This isn't accidental," Mason said. "This is systematic." Scarlett was doing math in her head. The cost difference between specified materials and actual materials, multiplied across the entire project. "Someone's skimming millions," she said. "The approved budget paid for proper materials, but they're installing cheap substitutes and pocketing the difference. Question is who?" "I know who." Scarlett's voice was ice. "There's only one person with enough control over this project to pull something like this off." She pulled out her phone and made a call. It rang 4 times before a smooth voice answered. "Scarlett, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "Gregory, we need to talk." "About Meridian." A pause. "Is there a problem?" "You could say that. I'm at the construction site right now, and I've found some very interesting discrepancies between the approved plans and actual installation." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation." "I'm sure there is, and I'd love to hear it. My office, Monday morning, 9 a.m. Bring your project documentation." "Scarlett, I don't appreciate the tone, and I don't appreciate being defrauded." "Monday, 9 a.m. Don't be late." She hung up before he could respond. Mason was watching her with something like respect. "You just declared war on one of the most powerful men in the city." "Yes. He's going to fight back, hard." "I know. You could lose everything." Scarlett thought about Ava in that hospital bed, about Ellie wheezing in her father's arms, about all the children who would eventually live in this building, trusting that the walls around them were safe. "Then I lose everything," she said. "But I'm not letting this stand." Mason nodded slowly, then he held out his hand. "In that case, I'm in." $65,000, full benefits, and I get final say on all safety decisions. Scarlett shook his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, steady. Deal. When can you start? Give me 2 weeks to finish my current projects. After that, I'm yours. They spent another hour documenting everything, taking photos, making notes. By the time they left, Scarlett had enough evidence to bury Gregory Hale if she could prove he was behind it. The drive back to the Bronx was quiet. Mason stared out the window, processing. You realize this is going to get ugly, he said finally. I know. Hale's got connections everywhere. City Council, Planning Commission, probably half the judges in New York. He's going to come after you with everything he has. Let him. Mason looked at her. You're different than I thought you'd be. What did you think I'd be? Softer. More concerned about protecting your reputation than doing the right thing. I was that person, Scarlett admitted. 3 days ago, I was exactly that person. Then I watched my daughter almost die because I was too busy worrying about appearances to see what was actually happening around me. I'm done being that person. People don't change that fast. You did. You went from combat medic to single father overnight. You figured it out. I didn't have a choice. Neither do I. Not anymore. She pulled up in front of his building. Mason unbuckled his seatbelt but didn't get out immediately. Thank you, he said, for the opportunity, for trusting me with this. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. If you hadn't noticed those beams, this would have gone on until someone got hurt. That's the job now, making sure nobody gets hurt. He climbed out of the car, then leaned back through the open door. Ms. Whitmore, for what it's worth, I think you're going to be okay. You've got fight in you. That counts for more than people think. Then he was gone, jogging up the steps into his building. Scarlett sat there for a moment, watching the neighborhood move around her. Kids playing basketball in the street, women carrying groceries, men standing on corners talking, life happening in all its complicated, messy, beautiful ways. She thought about what Mason had said, that she had fight in her. She hoped he was right, because she was going to need it. Monday morning arrived too fast. Scarlett was in her office by 7, reviewing documents and preparing for war. Richard Chen arrived at 8, looking nervous. The board heard you called a meeting with Hale, he said. They're not happy. 3 of them called me over the weekend asking what's going on. What did you tell them? That you're conducting a routine quality inspection. But Scarlett, if you're going after Gregory Hale, you need to be absolutely certain. He's not just an investor. He's on the board of half a dozen major companies. He golfs with the mayor. He's been stealing from us, Scarlett interrupted. Millions of dollars. And he's compromised the structural integrity of a building that's supposed to house families with children. I don't care who he golfs with. Richard looked at her like she'd grown a second head. You have proof? Enough to start asking very uncomfortable questions. At 8:55, Gregory Hale arrived. He was 62, silver-haired, expensively dressed. The kind of man who'd spent his entire life being the most important person in every room he entered. He walked into Scarlett's office with the confidence of someone who'd never truly been challenged. Scarlett, he said warmly, I hope we can clear up this misunderstanding quickly. I have a tea time at 11. Sit down, Gregory. The warmth flickered. Excuse me? Sit down. He sat, but his expression had cooled considerably. Scarlett slid a folder across her desk. These are photos from the Meridian construction site. Notice anything interesting? Gregory opened the folder, flipped through the images without much interest. They appear to be construction photos. They're documentation of material fraud. Every one of those photos shows components that don't match approved specifications. Cheaper substitutes installed in place of proper materials. I'm sure there's an explanation. There is. Someone's been approving material substitutions and pocketing the cost difference. I've run the numbers. We're talking about approximately $4 million in fraudulent billing. Gregory's face remained perfectly calm. That's a serious accusation. It's a statement of fact. The question is who's responsible. So I'm asking you directly. Did you approve these substitutions? Of course not. I'm an investor, not a project manager. I don't get involved in day-to-day operations. But you do approve major budgetary decisions, and you have final oversight of all contractors and engineers. Along with the entire board, yes. Scarlett pulled out another document. This is the approval for the project engineer. Your signature is on it. You personally signed off on hiring the firm that's been rubber stamping all these fraudulent changes. For the first time, something shifted in Gregory's expression. The pleasant mask slipped just slightly. Many people could have recommended that firm. But you approved them. And you approved the budget. And you have access to all the accounts where the money's been disappearing. Gregory stood slowly. I don't appreciate what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you that I'm launching a full investigation into this project. I'm hiring independent auditors to review every expense. And if I find evidence that you or anyone else has been defrauding this company, I'm going to the district attorney. You're making a mistake. Am I? Then cooperate with the investigation. Provide your documentation. Prove me wrong. Gregory buttoned his suit jacket with deliberate care. You're young, Scarlett. You've accomplished impressive things. But you're about to learn a very hard lesson about how things really work in this city. Some fights you can't win. We'll see. He walked to the door, then paused. I built my career by knowing when to push and when to step back. You should learn to do the same before it's too late. Then he was gone. Richard appeared in the doorway moments later, white as paper. I heard all of that. Scarlett, you just made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in New York. Good, Scarlett said. Now he knows I'm not backing down. Her phone rang. David Martinez. I've been digging into Gregory Hale like you asked, he said. You're not going to like what I found. Tell me. He's done this before. 3 times in the last decade. Different projects, different cities. Each time, he finds a way to skim money off construction budgets. By the time anyone notices, the buildings are already occupied, and it's cheaper to settle quietly than tear everything down and rebuild. Scarlett's stomach dropped. People could have died. One building did have a partial collapse. Brooklyn, 8 years ago. Service entrance gave way. 2 maintenance workers were injured. Hale's company paid out a settlement and buried it in legal paperwork. How does he keep getting away with it? Money, power, connections, and the willingness to destroy anyone who threatens him. Scarlett. 3 people have tried to expose him over the years. 1 lost their business. 1 lost their marriage. 1 left the industry entirely. What are you saying? I'm saying be careful. This man doesn't fight fair. Scarlett thanked him and hung up. Then she sat in her office and looked out over Manhattan at the city she'd conquered through sheer will and determination, and wondered if she'd just started a fight she couldn't win. Her phone buzzed, text message from an unknown number. Heard you're going after Hale. Count me in. Whatever you need. Mason. Scarlett stared at the message for a long time. She barely knew this man. He'd worked for her for exactly 0 days. He had every reason to stay out of this mess and protect himself and his daughter. But he was offering to fight anyway. She texted back, "Thank you. I'll keep you posted." Then she made another call. To her lawyer. Time to prepare for war. The war started quietly, the way most wars do. 2 days after confronting Gregory Hale, Scarlett arrived at her office to find 3 members of her board waiting in the conference room. Not scheduled, not announced. Just there, looking grim. Richard met her at the elevator, his face tight with stress. They showed up an hour ago, demanded a meeting. I tried to call you. It's fine, Scarlett handed him her coat. Let's get this over with. She walked into the conference room like she owned it, because she did. The 3 board members sat on one side of the table. Patricia Morse, investment banker and professional intimidator. James Fairchild, old money with opinions about everything. And David Chen, no relation to Richard, who'd made his fortune in tech and never let anyone forget it. Gentlemen, Patricia. Scarlett sat at the head of the table. To what do I owe the pleasure? Patricia didn't waste time on pleasantries. We've heard concerning rumors about the Meridian project. Gregory Hale called an emergency board meeting for Friday. He's claiming you've made serious accusations without proper evidence. I've found material fraud on a $4 million project. I'd say that warrants serious accusations. James leaned forward, his jowls quivering with indignation. Gregory Hale is one of the most respected developers in New York. You can't just throw around allegations like that. I'm not throwing anything around. I have documentation, photos, material samples. The construction site is using substandard components across the board. Construction sites make mistakes all the time, David said dismissively. That doesn't mean there's fraud. It means there's poor oversight. The oversight was fine until someone started approving material substitutions that violate every safety code in the book. Someone with access to project accounts and contractor relationships. Someone like Gregory Hale. Patricia's eyes narrowed. You're accusing a board member of criminal activity. Do you understand how serious that is? Do you understand how serious it is that we're building housing for families with children using materials that could cause structural failure? That's speculation. It's engineering. I've had independent consultants review the documentation. They all say the same thing. This building is unsafe. The three board members exchanged looks. Some silent conversation Scarlett wasn't part of. Here's what's going to happen, Patricia said finally. You're going to drop this investigation. You're going to issue a statement saying there was a misunderstanding about material specifications. And you're going to apologize to Gregory Hale for damaging his reputation. Scarlett laughed. Actually laughed. You can't be serious. We're deadly serious. The board voted this morning, 7-2. You drop this or we remove you as CEO. The room went very quiet. Scarlett sat back in her chair, studying the three people across from her. People she'd worked with for years. People she'd trusted. Let me make sure I understand, she said slowly. You want me to ignore criminal fraud because it's inconvenient for Gregory Hale. And if I don't, you'll fire me from the company I built. The company the board owns controlling interest in, James corrected. You're CEO at our pleasure. Never forget that. I see. Scarlett stood. Then I guess I have until Friday to change your minds. Scarlett, Patricia started. We're done here. I have work to do. She walked out before they could respond, her heels clicking on marble floors. She made it to her office, closed the door, and allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of panic. They were going to fire her, take away everything she'd built, all because she wouldn't look the other way while children's lives were put at risk. Her phone rang. Mason, she answered. This is a bad time. The board's trying to shut you down. It wasn't a question. How did you? Richard called me, said you might need backup. Want me to come over there? Scarlett closed her eyes. No, this is corporate warfare, not your fight. You hired me to oversee safety on Meridian. Someone compromising that safety makes it my fight. I'm coming over. Mason, but he'd already hung up. 40 minutes later, he was in her office, still wearing his construction gear and bringing the smell of sawdust with him. Richard hovered nervously by the door. Talk to me, Mason said, sitting across from her desk like he'd done it 100 times. What's the play? There is no play. The board's already decided. 7 votes against me. They want this buried, and they're willing to destroy me to make it happen. So change their minds. How? I have evidence, but Hale's got connections. Money, power. What do I have? Photos and material samples? It's not enough. Mason was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, what if we make it public? What? Go to the press. Show them what's happening. Once it's out there, the board can't bury it. That would destroy the company's reputation. Tank our stock price. Cost hundreds of people their jobs. Better than children dying when that building collapses. Richard made a strangled sound. She can't go to the press. That's career suicide. Every developer in New York would blacklist her. So she builds something new, Mason said simply. Better to start over clean than stay in a corrupt system. Scarlett stared at him. You're serious. Dead serious. You think I don't know what it's like to lose everything? I've done it. You survive. You rebuild. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of my world. This company is everything I have. No, it's not. Mason's voice was gentle but firm. You have a daughter who needs you more than this company ever will. And you have a choice about what kind of person you want to be. Someone who fights for what's right, or someone who protects her empire no matter the cost. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Scarlett thought about Ava, about the way her daughter looked at her sometimes, like she was staring at a stranger, about all the moments she'd missed because work came first, always work. I need time to think, she said. You've got until Friday. That's 3 days. Mason stood. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But if you're going down, go down swinging. Don't let them make you disappear quietly. After he left, Scarlett sat in her office as the sun set over Manhattan. The city glowed gold and amber, beautiful and brutal. She'd spent 15 years clawing her way to the top of this world, sacrificed her marriage, her friendships, her relationship with her daughter. For what? An office with a view? A company that would throw her away the moment she became inconvenient? Her phone buzzed. Text from Ava's school. Reminder, mother-daughter art night tomorrow at 6 p.m. Hope to see you there. Scarlett had completely forgotten. She checked her calendar. She had a dinner meeting with potential investors tomorrow night. Important people. Big money. She stared at the text for a long moment. Then she deleted the investor meeting and typed back, "We'll be there." That night, Scarlett went home early for the first time in months. Her penthouse apartment was pristine and empty, decorated by professionals who'd never asked what she actually liked. Ava was in her room doing homework with the nanny. "You're home," Ava said when Scarlett knocked on her door. The surprise in her voice stung. "I'm home, and I'm taking tomorrow off. There's an art thing at your school?" Ava's eyes went wide. "You want to come?" "If you want me there." "Yes!" Ava jumped up and hugged her, and Scarlett realized how long it had been since her daughter had hugged her without being asked. "We're making pottery. Miss Chen says we can paint them however we want." "Sounds perfect." They ordered pizza and watched a movie, curled up on the couch like normal people. Ava fell asleep halfway through, her head on Scarlett's shoulder. Scarlett sat there in the dark, listening to her daughter breathe, and thought about what mattered. The company didn't matter. The board didn't matter. Her reputation didn't matter. This did, right here. The next day, she called her lawyer. "Martin, I need you to prepare something for me. 2 things, actually. First, a full legal brief documenting the Meridian fraud, every piece of evidence we have, and second, a press release." "What kind of press release?" "The kind that burns bridges. I'm going public with everything." Martin was quiet for a moment. "Scarlett, are you sure? There's no coming back from this." "I'm sure. Get it ready for Thursday morning. I want it airtight." "Consider it done." Next call, David Martinez. "I need you to dig deeper on Gregory Hale. Everything. His finances, his shell companies, his offshore accounts. I don't care what it costs. Find the money trail." "Already on it. I've got a forensic accountant going through his records. Should have something by tomorrow." "Good. Send it to my lawyer when you do." Third call, Mason. "I'm doing it, going to the press, but I need your help with something first." "Name it." "Can you document every safety violation on that site? Photos, measurements, material samples. Everything we'd need to prove in court that the building's unsafe." "Already started. I've been going back at night after the crews leave. I've got about 60% documented so far." "You've been doing this on your own time?" "Someone needs to. These violations aren't going to document themselves." "Mason, you don't have to." "Yeah, I do. I told you I was in. I meant it." Scarlett felt something crack open in her chest. When was the last time someone had her back like this? Not because they wanted something, but because it was right? "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank me when this is over and we're both not unemployed." That evening, Scarlett and Ava went to the mother-daughter art night. The school gymnasium was full of families sitting at long tables covered in newspaper, painting ceramic bowls and mugs. It was chaotic and messy and loud, and Scarlett loved every second of it. Ava painted her bowl with flowers and butterflies, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Scarlett tried to paint hers with geometric patterns, and ended up with something that looked like a kindergartner's first attempt. "That's really bad, Mom," Ava said, giggling. "I know. I'm terrible at this." "It's okay. We can put it somewhere nobody will see it." They laughed together, and Scarlett realized this was the most time they'd spent together in weeks, maybe months, just being together, not rushing to the next thing. A woman at the next table leaned over. "Your daughter's very talented." "She is," Scarlett agreed, watching Ava add more flowers. "She gets it from her father. He was artistic, too." She hadn't talked about James in years, hadn't let herself think about him. But sitting here in this loud gymnasium, covered in paint, she remembered the good parts. How he'd always made time for family, how he'd believed in balance, in living instead of just working. He would have hated what she'd become, the obsessive CEO who put everything into her company and nothing into her life. "I'm sorry I've been gone so much," Scarlett said quietly to Ava. Ava looked up from her bowl. "It's okay. You have important work. Not as important as you. Nothing's as important as you." "Really? Really?"
And I'm going to do better, starting now. Ava smiled, and it was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Can we do this again next week? There's a science fair. Absolutely, put it on my calendar.
They finished their pottery and brought it home, setting the pieces on the kitchen counter to dry. Ava went to bed happy, chattering about her bowl and where she'd put it in her room. Scarlett sat alone in her living room afterward, looking at the crooked, messy bowl she'd made. It was objectively terrible. The paint was uneven, the pattern made no sense, one side was higher than the other, but Ava had said they'd find somewhere special for it. Scarlett's phone rang. David Martinez. I found it. The money trail, it's ugly. Tell me. Hale's been running this scheme for 12 years, not 10, 6 different projects across 4 states. He sets up shell companies to handle material procurement, marks up costs on paper, installs cheap substitutes, and pockets the difference. The Meridian project alone, he's stolen $4.2 million. Total across all projects is somewhere north of $20 million. Scarlett felt sick. How did he get away with it for so long? Money and connections, like I said. Plus he's smart about it. Never takes too much from one project, always stays just under the threshold where people would look too closely. And if anyone does notice, he either buys them off or destroys them. Send everything to Martin. We're going to need it. Already done. Scarlett, be careful. Men like Hale don't go down easy. Neither do I. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, with rain hammering against the windows. Scarlett dressed in her favorite suit, not the expensive designer one she usually wore to important meetings, but the one she'd bought when she first started her company, when she still remembered why she was doing this. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at a hotel conference room downtown. Martin had sent out invitations to every major news outlet in New York, business reporters, investigative journalists, even a few national correspondents. Scarlett arrived at 9:30 to find the room already filling up. Cameras, microphones, reporters checking their phones and chatting. Mason was there too, standing in the back in a suit that didn't quite fit right. He gave her a nod when she walked in. Martin appeared at her elbow, looking nervous. Are you absolutely sure about this? Once you start talking, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. The board's going to crucify you. Let them try. At exactly 10 a.m., Scarlett stepped up to the podium. The room went quiet. Camera flashes started immediately. Thank you all for coming, she began. My name is Scarlett Whitmore, CEO of the Whitmore Group. I'm here today to expose a massive fraud scheme that's been operating in New York's construction industry for over a decade. She laid it all out. The material substitutions, the fake approvals, the shell companies. Gregory Hale's name appeared in her notes 47 times. The reporter scribbled frantically, asked rapid-fire questions. How much money? Which projects? Did she have proof? Was she pressing charges? Scarlett answered everything, showed photos, cited documentation, named names. Halfway through, her phone started buzzing. Text after text, she ignored it. The press conference lasted 90 minutes. When it ended, Scarlett felt hollowed out but strangely light, like she'd been carrying something heavy and finally set it down. Mason appeared beside her as reporters packed up their equipment. That was something. That was professional suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it was the first honest thing this industry's seen in years. Her phone rang. Richard Chen. Scarlett, what have you done? The board's going insane. Patricia's calling for an emergency vote to remove you immediately. Gregory Hale's lawyer already put out a statement calling you delusional and threatening a defamation suit. The stock price is tanking. Everyone's... Richard, stop. Scarlett's voice was calm. I know what I did. I know what it costs, and I'd do it again. They're going to destroy you. They're going to try, but I'm not going down without a fight. She hung up and looked at Mason. Want to get coffee? I'm suddenly unemployed and have nothing but time. He actually smiled. Sure. There's a place near my apartment. Real coffee, not that fancy stuff you're probably used to. They took a cab to the Bronx, and Scarlett found herself in a tiny coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and had seats that had been patched with duct tape. It was perfect. So what now? Mason asked, stirring sugar into his coffee. Now I wait for the lawsuits. Hale's going to come at me with everything. The board will probably vote to remove me officially, and then I start over. Doing what? I have no idea. Maybe something that actually matters. Housing development for people who need it, not people who can afford penthouses. That pays terrible. I know, but maybe that's okay. Maybe I've been chasing the wrong things. Mason was quiet for a moment, watching rain run down the window. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Standing up to Hale. Going public. Your daughter's going to see the news eventually. She'll know her mother fought for something real. How do you know what the right thing is when you're about to lose everything?
You don't know. You just do it anyway and hope you can live with the consequences. He paused. When Sarah died, my wife, I had a choice. I could keep working, keep deployed, let someone else raise Ellie, or I could leave everything I knew and figure out how to be a single father with no plan and no support system. Scariest decision I ever made. Do you regret it? Regret? Not for a second. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, we're broke most of the time. But I know my daughter. I'm there when she's sick. I make her breakfast. I read her stories. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Scarlett thought about Ava's face when she'd said she'd come to art night. Pure joy. When was the last time her daughter had looked at her like that? I've been a terrible mother, she said quietly. You're here now. That's what counts, is it? All those years I wasn't there, they don't just disappear. No, but you can't change the past. You can only change what you do next. They sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours, talking about everything and nothing. Mason told her about Ellie's latest obsession with dinosaurs. Scarlett told him about Ava's pottery bowl. For the first time in years, she wasn't CEO Scarlett Whitmore, master of the universe. She was just Scarlett, talking to someone who actually listened. Her phone rang again. Martin. I've got news. The DA's office just announced they're opening a criminal investigation into Gregory Hale. They're using your documentation as a starting point. Scarlett's heart jumped. They're actually investigating. It's preliminary, but yes, your press conference lit a fire. They can't ignore this now. Too public. What about Hale's defamation suit? Bluster. His lawyers are too smart to actually file. Everything you said was documented and provable. They file suit, we get discovery, and we bury him with his own paperwork. After she hung up, Mason raised his coffee cup. To burning it all down. Scarlett clinked her cup against his. To starting over. Friday morning, the board voted to remove Scarlett as CEO. The vote was unanimous. Even the two who'd initially supported her investigation folded under pressure. Scarlett cleaned out her office with Richard's help, packing 15 years of work into boxes. Awards, photos, contracts that had seemed so important at the time. I'm sorry, Richard said quietly, for not backing you up more. You did what you had to do. I don't blame you. I should have been braver, like you. I wasn't brave. I was cornered. There's a difference. She carried her boxes to her car and drove home. The penthouse felt too big, too empty. All this space and nothing in it that actually mattered. Ava was at school. Scarlett sat on the couch in her business suit, surrounded by boxes of her former life, and wondered what the hell came next. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Whitmore? This is Jennifer Torres from the New York Times. I'd like to do a longer piece on the Meridian investigation. Would you be willing to sit for an interview? Over the next week, 6 different reporters called. The story was spreading. Other developers who'd worked with Hale started coming forward quietly, sharing their own suspicions. The DA's investigation expanded, and through it all, Mason kept documenting violations at the construction site. The crew had been told to keep working until the investigation concluded, so every day he showed up, did his job, and photographed everything wrong. He sent Scarlett updates every evening. Photos, notes, material samples. Found more electrical violations today. Wiring's undersized by 40%. Concrete mix is off. Had a sample tested, 20% weaker than spec. Fire suppression system's a joke. Half the sprinklers aren't even connected to water supply. Each message was another nail in Hale's coffin. 10 days after the press conference, the DA filed formal charges. Wire fraud, tax evasion, endangering public safety. 15 counts total. Gregory Hale's lawyer held his own press conference, denying everything. But the evidence was overwhelming. The story had grown too big to control. Scarlett watched it all unfold from her couch, unemployed and oddly at peace. She spent her days with Ava,
Went to the science fair, started actually cooking dinner instead of ordering in, read bedtime stories. It was the most normal she'd felt in years. Mason came over one evening with Ellie. The girls played in Ava's room while the adults sat in the kitchen drinking wine. "The board's trying to distance themselves from Hale now," Scarlett said, issuing statements about how shocked they are, like they didn't vote to fire me for exposing him. "People protect themselves first. It's human nature. Doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it predictable." Mason refilled her glass. "What are you going to do now, career-wise?" "I've been thinking about that. I still own 30% of Whitmore Group. I can't be CEO, but I'm still a major shareholder, and I've been talking to some lawyers about starting something new. A nonprofit focused on affordable housing with actual safety standards. That'll pay even worse than I thought." "Probably, but I've got enough money saved, and Ava needs a mother who's actually present, not a workaholic who sees her twice a week. She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her. Took me way too long to figure that out." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the girls laugh in the other room. Scarlett found herself studying Mason's profile, the slight scar near his left eye, the way his hands wrapped around the wine glass, careful despite their size. "Thank you," she said suddenly, "for everything. For saving Ava, for standing with me against Hale, for not letting me take the easy way out." "You never would have taken the easy way out. You're not built that way." "I wanted to. When the board threatened me, I seriously considered just dropping the whole thing." "But you didn't." "Because of you. You said I had to choose what kind of person I wanted to be. That stuck with me." Mason looked at her, and something shifted in the air between them, an awareness that hadn't been there before. "Scarlett? Mommy!" Ava burst into the kitchen, Ellie right behind her. "Can Ellie stay for a sleepover, please?" Scarlett looked at Mason, who shrugged. "I'm okay with it if you are." "Sleepover it is." The girls shrieked with excitement and ran back to Ava's room to plan. Mason stood to leave. "I should get going. Let you guys do your thing." Scarlett walked him to the door. In the hallway he paused. "I meant what I said earlier, about you choosing. You made the hard choice, and it cost you everything you'd built, but you got something better in return." "What's that?" "Yourself. The version of you that wasn't hiding behind work and control. The person who shows up to art night and makes terrible pottery." Scarlett laughed. "That bowl really is awful. Ava loves it. That's all that matters." He left, and Scarlett stood in her doorway for a long moment, thinking about choices and consequences and the strange way life worked sometimes. A month ago, she'd been CEO of one of New York's biggest real estate firms, powerful and respected and utterly alone. Now she was unemployed, under investigation by her former board and facing possible legal action. But she had her daughter back. She had her integrity back. And she had something she hadn't expected. A friendship with a man who'd seen her at her absolute worst and chosen to stand beside her anyway. She closed the door and went to check on the girls, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The sleepover became a regular thing after that first night. Every other Friday, Ellie and Ava traded houses. Sometimes they'd be at Scarlett's penthouse, playing dress-up with clothes that cost more than Mason's monthly rent. Other times they'd be crammed into Mason's tiny apartment, building blanket forts and eating pizza on the floor because there wasn't room for everyone at the table. Scarlett found herself preferring the apartment nights. There was something real about them, something honest. She and Mason would sit on that worn couch while the girls giggled in the other room, drinking cheap beer and talking about everything except what was obviously happening between them. The way their conversations lasted hours. The way she'd started looking forward to Friday nights more than anything else in her week. The way Mason's eyes lingered on her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. Neither of them acknowledged it. Both of them felt it. The investigation into Gregory Hale moved slowly, the way legal proceedings always did. The DA was building a case, collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses. Mason kept documenting violations at the Meridian site, even though technically he wasn't supposed to be there anymore. The new management had tried to ban him, but he knew the security guards and they looked the other way. "Found something interesting today," he told Scarlett one evening in late January. They were at her place, the girls making elaborate cities out of Legos in Ava's room. "Hale's been pressuring the new contractors to finish the build using the same cheap materials. Wants to get the project done before the investigation concludes." Scarlett looked up from her laptop. She'd been working on the nonprofit paperwork, trying to figure out funding structures and board compositions. He can't seriously think he'll get away with that. He's desperate. His other projects are falling apart. 3 different cities have opened investigations. He's losing contracts left and right. Meridian's his last chance to recoup some of the money before everything collapses. We need to stop the construction. I've been trying. Filed complaints with the city building department. They keep getting lost in the system. Mason made air quotes with his fingers. Hale's still got friends in the right places. Scarlett felt the familiar frustration rising. She'd exposed the fraud, gone public, lost everything. And Hale was still manipulating the system, still putting lives at risk. There has to be something we can do. There is. We keep documenting, keep filing complaints. Eventually, someone will listen. What if they don't? What if that building opens and someone gets hurt? Mason was quiet for a moment. Then we'll deal with it, but we can't give up now, not after coming this far. He was right. Scarlett knew he was right, but the waiting was killing her. She'd spent her whole life making things happen, forcing outcomes through sheer will. This passive resistance felt wrong. Her phone rang. Martin, I've got news. The DA wants you to testify before a grand jury next month. They're moving forward with the indictment. That's good, right? It's great. It means they think they have enough to prosecute. But Scarlett, you need to be prepared. Hale's lawyers are going to come after you hard. They'll try to discredit you, make you look unstable or vindictive. It's not going to be pleasant. I can handle it. I know you can. Just don't go in thinking this will be easy. After she hung up, Mason looked at her questioningly. Grand jury testimony, she explained. They're building the case against Hale. When? Next month, February. You nervous? Terrified. I've never testified in court before. It's not court, not yet. Grand jury's different, just you and the prosecutors and the jury. You tell them what you know, show them the evidence. That's it. You say that like it's simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. You know what happened. You have proof. You tell the truth. Everything else is just noise. Scarlett wished she had his confidence, but she nodded anyway, trying to absorb some of his calm certainty. The girls emerged from Ava's room demanding hot chocolate and a movie. They all piled onto the couch. Ellie and Ava squished between the adults and watched some animated film about talking animals. Scarlett barely paid attention to the screen. She was too aware of Mason's arm stretched along the back of the couch, not quite touching her shoulders, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Halfway through the movie, Ava fell asleep with her head on Scarlett's lap. Ellie dozed off against Mason's chest. Neither adult moved, not wanting to disturb the girls. This is nice, Scarlett said quietly. Yeah, it is. I never did this with Ava before, just sat and watched movies. I was always too busy. You're doing it now. That counts. Does it? Or am I just making up for lost time? Mason shifted slightly, careful not to wake Ellie. My dad used to say that guilt was just fear wearing a disguise. You feel guilty because you're afraid you can't fix what you broke. But kids don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. You're present now. Ava sees that. Your dad sounds wise. He was. Died when I was 20. Heart attack out of nowhere. Mason's voice went soft. I think about him a lot now that I'm raising Ellie alone. Wonder what he'd say about the choices I've made. I think he'd be proud. You're a good father. I try. Most days I feel like I'm failing at it. You're not. Ellie's happy, well-adjusted. She feels loved. How can you tell? You. The way she looks at you, like you're her whole world. Ava used to look at me like that, before I started working all the time. I'm trying to earn that look back. They sat in the quiet darkness, just the glow of the TV and the sound of their daughter's breathing. Scarlett felt something settling inside her, something that had been restless and anxious for years finally going still. I should probably get Ellie home, Mason said eventually. School tomorrow. Right, of course. But neither of them moved for another few minutes. When Mason finally scooped up Ellie, the little girl barely stirred, just wrapped her arms around his neck and mumbled something unintelligible. Scarlett walked them to the door. Thank you for tonight, she said. We didn't do anything. Exactly. It was perfect. Mason smiled, that slow, genuine smile she was starting to recognize. See you next week? Definitely. He left, and Scarlett carried Ava to bed, tucking her daughter in with a gentleness she hadn't allowed herself in years. She stood in the doorway for a long time, watching Ava sleep, and thought about the strange path her life had taken. 6 months ago, she would have laughed at the idea of spending Friday nights watching kids' movies with a construction worker in the Bronx. Now it was the highlight of her week. The grand jury testimony happened on a freezing February morning.
Scarlett dressed carefully, choosing a conservative suit that said professional without screaming wealthy CEO. Martin met her at the courthouse, carrying a briefcase full of documentation. "Remember," he said as they walked up the steps, "just answer the questions they ask. Don't elaborate unless they specifically request more detail. And if you're not sure about something, say so. Don't guess." "I know. You've told me this about 50 times.
I'm telling you again because people get nervous and start rambling. Don't ramble." The grand jury room was smaller than Scarlett expected. 15 people sat in rows, watching her with expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. The prosecutor was a woman named Angela Chen, who'd built her career prosecuting white-collar crime. "Ms. Whitmore, thank you for being here today," Angela began. "Can you start by telling us about your relationship with Gregory Hale?"
Scarlett did.
She explained the Meridian Project, the board structure, Hale's role as primary investor. She kept her voice steady and professional, the way she'd learned to do in 100 business meetings. Then Angela asked about the night at the construction site. "Walk us through what you found." Scarlett described the steel beams, the material discrepancies, Mason's observations. Angela projected the photos on a screen, and Scarlett identified each violation.
"And when you confronted Mr. Hale about these violations, what was his response?" "He denied knowledge, said he was just an investor, not involved in day-to-day operations. Then he threatened me." "Threatened how?" "He said I was making a mistake, that I should learn when to step back before it was too late. He implied there would be consequences if I pursued the investigation." "Did you take that as a threat?" "Yes, absolutely."
The questions continued for 2 hours. Angela walked her through the timeline, the documentation, the board meeting where they'd tried to fire her. Through it all, Scarlett stayed calm and factual. Then one of the jury members raised his hand. "I have a question. Why did you go public with this? Why not just report it to the authorities quietly?"
Scarlett took a breath. "Because I tried that. I reported the violations to the building department,
Filed complaints. Nothing happened. Gregory Hale has connections throughout the city government, people who owed him favors. I realized that if I wanted anything to actually change, I needed to make it impossible to ignore. Going public was the only way to do that. Even though it cost you your job?
even though it cost me everything.
Because children were going to live in that building, and I couldn't live with myself if something happened to them because I stayed quiet." The jury member nodded, apparently satisfied. After the testimony ended, Angela walked Scarlett out. "You did well. Very credible. What happens now?" "Now we wait for their decision. If they indict, we move to trial. That could take months. And if they don't indict, then Hale walks away. But I don't think that's going to happen. The evidence is overwhelming." Scarlett left the courthouse feeling drained. Reliving the whole nightmare had opened wounds she'd thought were starting to heal. She sat in her car for a long time, not ready to drive, not ready to face anything. Her phone buzzed, text from Mason. "How'd it go?" She typed back, "Okay, I think. Hard to tell. Want company? I can bring lunch. Please." An hour later, they were sitting in her living room eating sandwiches from a deli near his apartment. Scarlett had changed into sweats and pulled her hair into a messy bun. She looked nothing like the polished CEO who'd testified that morning. "Tell me about it," Mason said. So she did. She walked him through every question, every answer, the way the jury had looked at her. Mason listened without interrupting, just let her talk until she ran out of words. "You did good," he said when she finished. "Sounds like you handled it exactly right. I don't know. Maybe I should have been more forceful, or less emotional, or you were honest. That's all anyone can ask." What if it's not enough? What if they don't indict him? Then we find another way. "But Scarlett, you've already won the important part. You exposed the fraud. You made it public. Even if Hale doesn't go to jail, everyone knows what he did. His reputation is destroyed. His business is collapsing. He's finished in this industry." "That's not justice." "No, but sometimes it's the best we get. Scarlett leaned back against the couch, exhausted. I'm so tired of fighting. I know. I just want things to be normal, whatever that means. Mason set down his sandwich and turned to look at her. Can I ask you something? Sure. What are we doing here? Scarlett's heart kicked up. What do you mean? I mean this, us, these Friday nights, the way we talk for hours, the way you look at me sometimes when you think I'm not paying attention. He paused. I need to know if I'm imagining it. She could have deflected, made a joke, pretended not to understand. Instead, she met his eyes and told the truth. You're not imagining it. Okay, so what do we do about it? I don't know. This is complicated. We're from completely different worlds. You work construction. I was a CEO. I have a daughter. You have a daughter. There are a lot of ways this could go wrong. There are also ways it could go right. Are there? Mason, I don't know how to do this. I was married once, and I was terrible at it. I worked all the time. I put my career first. Eventually, James couldn't take it anymore, and I didn't blame him. I'm not good at relationships. Neither am I. I've been alone since Sarah died. Haven't even tried to date. Didn't see the point. So we're both disasters. That's not exactly encouraging. Mason smiled. Maybe that's why it could work. We both know what we're bad at. We could try not making the same mistakes. Or we could make brand new mistakes. Probably, but I'd rather make mistakes with you than play it safe alone. Scarlett felt something in her chest break open. Not breaking bad. Breaking free. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. What if we screw this up? What if it affects the girls? Then we'll deal with it, like adults. We'll put them first and figure it out. Mason reached over and took her hand. His palm was rough, scarred from years of physical work. But I think we owe it to ourselves to try. Don't you? Scarlett looked at their joined hands, hers soft and manicured, his marked by labor and life. They didn't match. They didn't make sense on paper, but they felt right. Okay, she said quietly. Let's try. Mason leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and careful and absolutely terrifying in the best possible way. They broke apart after a moment, both breathing a little faster. Well, Scarlett said, yeah. We should probably talk about ground rules and expectations. And Mason kissed her again, and Scarlett stopped trying to plan and control everything. For once in her life, she just let something happen. They spent the rest of the afternoon on that couch, talking and kissing and figuring out what this thing between them might look like. No promises, no guarantees, just two broken people trying to build something real. When Mason finally left to pick up Ellie from school, Scarlett sat alone in her apartment, touching her lips and smiling like a teenager. Ava came home an hour later from her after-school program and immediately noticed something different. Why are you smiling like that? I'm just happy. About what? About everything. About you. About my life. Ava studied her suspiciously. Did something happen with Mr. Reed? Scarlett tried to keep her expression neutral. Why would you ask that? Because you always smile more when he's here, and you get all weird and nervous. I do not get weird and nervous. You do. You check your hair in the mirror like 5 times, and you laugh at his jokes even when they're not funny. Scarlett laughed despite herself. Okay, you caught me. Mr. Reed and we're trying something, seeing if we might be more than friends. Ava's face lit up. Really? Does that mean Ellie and I can be sisters? Whoa, slow down. We just started this. We're taking it slow. But maybe eventually? Maybe. If things work out. But that's a long way off, and a lot has to happen first. I hope it works out. I like Mr. Reed, and I really like Ellie. Me too, baby. Me too. That night, Scarlett lay in bed thinking about the day. The grand jury testimony, the conversation with Mason, the kiss. All of it felt surreal, like she was living someone else's life. But it was her life. The messy, complicated, uncertain life she'd chosen when she decided to stop hiding behind work and control. Her phone buzzed. Text from Mason. Can't stop thinking about today. She smiled and typed back. Which part? All of it. but especially the part where I finally got to kiss you. It was pretty good. Just pretty good? I clearly need to practice more. Is that an offer? Absolutely. Tomorrow night? After the girls are asleep? It's a date. Scarlett set down her phone and stared at the ceiling, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Not just happiness, not just hope. Something deeper and more solid. Peace. The grand jury voted to indict Gregory Hale 3 weeks later. 15 counts, including wire fraud, tax evasion, bribery, and reckless endangerment. The news broke on a Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon, every major outlet in New York was covering the story. Scarlett watched the coverage from her living room, Mason beside her. The reporters showed footage of Hale being led into court in handcuffs. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The powerful developer who'd intimidated an entire industry reduced to just another criminal in a courtroom.
It's really happening, Scarlett said softly. It is. I keep waiting to feel satisfied, vindicated, but I just feel tired. Mason put his arm around her. That's normal. This has been exhausting. You've been fighting for months. It's not over yet. The trial could take a year. Then we'll deal with it for a year, together. That word still felt strange to Scarlett. Together. She'd been alone for so long, she'd forgotten what it meant to have someone truly beside her. They'd been dating for a month now, though dating felt like the wrong word for what they were doing. It was quieter than that. More domestic. Dinners together with the girls, movie nights, helping with homework. The kind of ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because Scarlett had never let herself have them before. She'd told Ava about the relationship after that first week. Ava had been thrilled, immediately planning their wedding and asking if she could be the flower girl. Scarlett had gently explained that they were just dating, that grown-up relationships moved slowly, that there might not even be a wedding. But secretly, late at night when Mason had gone home and Ava was asleep, Scarlett let herself imagine it. A future where this was permanent, where the four of them were a real family. It terrified her, but it also felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Mason had been more cautious, telling Ellie. He'd waited 2 weeks, making sure this was serious before involving his daughter. When he finally sat down with her, Ellie had just shrugged and said, "I know, Daddy, I'm not dumb." Apparently children saw things adults tried to hide. The construction at Meridian had finally been halted by court order. A judge had reviewed the evidence and ruled that work couldn't continue until every violation was corrected and independently verified. It would take months, maybe years, but at least no one would be living in a death trap. Mason had been hired by the court-appointed inspector to help with the review process. $65,000 a year plus benefits, exactly what Scarlett had originally offered him. Only now he was working for the city, not for her company. Scarlett's nonprofit was slowly taking shape. She'd assembled a board of directors, filed all the paperwork, and started looking for funding. The goal was simple: affordable housing built to actual safety standards, not corner-cut nightmares designed to maximize profit. It would be slow work, unglamorous, nothing like running a major real estate firm. But it mattered, and that was enough. Her phone rang. Richard Chen. "Scarlett, I wanted to give you a heads up. The board's meeting next week to discuss the future of Whitmore Group. With Hale indicted and the Meridian project on hold, they're hemorrhaging money. Some of them want to dissolve the company entirely. Let them. You own 30%. You could fight this. Force them to buy you out at fair market value." Scarlett thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "No, let the company die. It's built on corruption anyway. Better to start fresh." "Are you sure? That's millions of dollars you'd be walking away from." "I'm sure. I've got enough money. And I've got something better now." "What's that?" "A life." After she hung up, Mason looked at her questioningly. "The company's probably going under," she explained. "I could fight to save it, try to salvage something. But you're not going to." "Nope." "No regrets?" Scarlett thought about the question seriously. Did she regret building Whitmore Group? Spending 15 years of her life creating something that would now disappear? "No," she said finally. "I needed to build it, to prove I could, but I don't need it anymore. I'm okay letting it go." That's growth. Or insanity. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Mason laughed and pulled her closer. They sat like that for a while, watching the news coverage wind down.
thinking about everything that had happened and everything still to come. "Can I tell you something?" Scarlett said eventually. "Always." "I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. I don't think I've been happy since before James died. Maybe not even then. But right now, with you, with Ava finally talking to me like she trusts me again, with work that actually means something, I'm happy." "Good. You deserve to be happy." "So do you." "Are you happy?" Mason considered the question. "Yeah, I am. It's strange. 6 months ago, I was barely holding things together, working myself to death, worried about Ellie's medical bills, feeling like I was failing at everything. And now," he trailed off. "Now? Now I've got a job I care about. Ellie's health is stable thanks to the insurance. And I've got you. Yeah, I'm happy." Scarlett kissed him, soft and sweet. "We're a mess, you know, both of us. Broken people trying to figure things out. Best kind of people. The ones who've been broken know how to be gentle with other people's broken pieces. Is that your dad's wisdom again?" "Nope. That's all me." They spent the rest of the evening planning Ava's upcoming birthday party. She'd asked for something simple. Just Ellie and a few school friends, pizza and a movie. No extravagant venue, no expensive entertainment, just kids being kids. Scarlett loved that. Loved that her daughter was learning what actually mattered. Later, after Mason had gone home and Ava was asleep, Scarlett stood on her balcony looking out over Manhattan. The city glowed in the darkness, millions of lights marking millions of lives. All those people down there, fighting their own battles, nursing their own wounds, trying to build something meaningful out of the chaos. She used to look at this view and feel powerful, like she owned a piece of something vast and important. Now she just felt connected, part of the whole messy, beautiful struggle of being human. Her phone buzzed. Text from Mason. "Thank you for today, for everything." "For what?" "I didn't do anything." "You let me be part of your life. That's everything." Scarlett's eyes burned with unexpected tears. When had anyone last made her feel this seen, this valued? "You're part of my life because I want you here. Don't thank me for that. Still, I'm grateful. Sleep well." "You too." She stood on that balcony for another hour, cold air biting through her sweater, thinking about the strange path that had led her here. From judging a soaked father in the rain to falling for him. From ruthless CEO to unemployed whistleblower to nonprofit founder. From absent mother to someone Ava actually wanted to spend time with. None of it had gone according to plan. All of it felt right. Inside, her phone rang again. Unknown number. Scarlett almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Whitmore? This is Detective Sarah Kim with the NYPD. I'm working with the DA's office on the Hale investigation. We've uncovered some additional evidence we'd like to discuss with you. Would you be available to meet tomorrow?" "Of course. What kind of evidence?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you come to the precinct at 10 a.m.? "I'll be there." Scarlett hung up, unease settling in her stomach. What else could they have found? Hale was already facing 15 charges. How much worse could it get? She texted Mason. "Police want to meet tomorrow. More evidence, apparently." His response came immediately. "Want me to come with you? Would you?" "Of course. I'll pick you up at 9:30. Scarlett went to bed feeling grateful and anxious in equal measure. Grateful for Mason, for his steady presence and unconditional support. Anxious about what tomorrow would bring. She fell asleep thinking about broken people and second chances, about the difference between surviving and living, about the unexpected ways life could reshape itself if you were brave enough to let it. Detective Sarah Kim was younger than Scarlett expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She met them in a cramped interview room at the precinct, a folder thick with documents spread across the table. Mason sat beside Scarlett, close enough that their shoulders touched. That small point of contact kept her grounded. "Thank you for coming in," Detective Kim said. "I know you've already been through a lot with this case. Unfortunately, it's gotten more complicated." "How?" Scarlett asked. Kim pulled out a series of bank statements. "We've been tracing Gregory Hale's financial transactions, following the money from the Meridian Project and his other developments. What we found goes deeper than material fraud." She slid the documents across the table. Scarlett scanned them, her stomach sinking with each page. "He was paying off building inspectors," she said quietly. "Not just inspectors, city council members, planning commission officials, even a few judges. Kim tapped one statement. This payment here? $200,000 to a councilman who voted to approve zoning variances for 3 of Hale's projects. This one? $150,000 to an inspector who signed off on Meridian despite documented violations. Mason leaned forward, studying the papers. How long has this been going on? Based on what we've found? At least 15 years, maybe longer. Hale built an entire network of corruption. Every time someone got close to exposing him, he either paid them off or destroyed them. Scarlett felt sick. She'd known Hale was corrupt, but this was systematic, institutional. He'd poisoned the entire system. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because some of these payments went through accounts connected to Whitmore Group. We need to verify that you didn't know about them. The implication hung in the air. Scarlett's hands went cold. I had no idea. I never saw these transactions. I believe you, but the DA needs to be thorough. We'll need to examine your company's financial records. All of them. The board dissolved Whitmore Group last week. I don't have access to those records anymore. We can subpoena them, but it would be easier if you cooperated voluntarily, showed us everything you have. Scarlett looked at Mason. He nodded slightly. Trust your instincts. I'll cooperate fully, she said. Whatever you need. But I want it on record that I knew nothing about bribes or payoffs. Gregory Hale operated behind my back. Understood. We'll need you to sign some statements. And Miss Whitmore, this investigation is about to get a lot more public. When we start arresting city officials, the media is going to go crazy. Your name will come up. You need to be prepared for that. I've already lost everything that matters to my reputation. What's a little more damage? Kim almost smiled. That's the right attitude. We'll be in touch. Outside the precinct, Scarlett stood on the sidewalk and tried to process everything. The case had expanded from fraud to institutional corruption. More arrests were coming, more headlines, more scrutiny. You okay? Mason asked. I don't know. I thought this was almost over. Now it feels like it's just beginning. Want to get coffee? Talk it through? I want to go home and pretend none of this is happening, but coffee sounds better. They found a diner 2 blocks away, one of those places that had probably looked exactly the same since 1975. Cracked vinyl booths, laminate tables, coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner for hours. It was perfect. They slid into a booth near the back. A tired waitress took their order without making conversation. Scarlett appreciated that. She didn't have energy for small talk. They think I might have known, she said once the waitress left, about the bribes. They have to eliminate that possibility. It's procedure. What if they find something I missed? Some document I signed without reading carefully? What if I'm implicated in this? Then we'll deal with it. But Scarlett, you exposed this whole thing. You lost your career to make it public. Nobody's going to seriously believe you were part of it. Gregory Hale's lawyers will. They'll try to drag me down with him. Let them try. You've got the truth on your side. Scarlett wished she had his certainty. But the truth didn't always win. Sometimes the people with better lawyers and more money managed to twist reality until it served them. I'm tired of fighting, she said. I thought I was strong enough for this. Now I'm not sure. Mason reached across the table and took her hand. You don't have to be strong all the time. That's what I'm here for. Let me carry some of this. It's not your burden. It is if I choose to make it mine. And I'm choosing. So stop trying to protect me from your problems and let me help. Scarlett felt tears building but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in public. I don't know how to do that, she admitted. Let people help. I've been handling everything alone for so long. Then learn. Start with me. Tell me what you need right now. What did she need? Scarlett thought about it. Not solutions, not advice, just someone who wouldn't leave when things got ugly. I need you to stay, she said quietly. Even when this gets worse, even when it's messy and complicated and exhausting, I need to know you're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. Promise? Promise. The coffee arrived, terrible and comforting. They sat there for an hour, not really talking about the case, just being together. Mason told her about Ellie's latest obsession with planets. Scarlett told him about Ava's upcoming school play where she'd been cast as a tree. Normal things. Human things. The kind of conversation that reminded Scarlett there was more to life than corruption and court cases. Her phone buzzed. Text from Angela Chen, the prosecutor. Need to meet tomorrow. Important developments. Scarlett showed Mason the message. He read it and sighed. No rest for the righteous. Or the stupid, still not sure which category I fall into. The righteous one. Definitely the righteous one. They finished their coffee and headed back to Scarlett's apartment. Ava was at school, wouldn't be home for hours. The place felt too quiet, too empty. Mason seemed to sense her mood. Want me to stay for a while? Please. They ended up on the couch, Scarlett curled against him, his arm around her shoulders. It felt safe, solid, like maybe she could survive whatever came next as long as she had this. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything? Do you ever regret it, getting involved in all this? You could have just stayed quiet, kept your construction job, avoided the whole mess. Mason was quiet for a moment. No, I don't regret it. Yeah, it's been hard, but some things you can't walk away from. Not if you want to look at yourself in the mirror. Even knowing what it would cost? Even then. I've got a daughter who's watching how I move through the world. What kind of lesson would I be teaching her if I saw something wrong and did nothing because it was convenient? You're a better person than I am. No, I'm just someone who's already lost everything once. It makes you less afraid of losing it again. You learn that you can survive it, that life keeps going even when it feels like the world's ending. Scarlett thought about that, about how Mason had rebuilt his life after Sarah died, how he'd kept going when everything fell apart. How did you do it, she asked. After your wife. How did you keep going? I didn't have a choice. Ellie needed me. So I got up every day and did the next thing, fed her, changed her, took her to doctors, and slowly, over time, it got easier. Not better, exactly. Just easier to carry. Do you still miss her? Every day. But it's different now, not the sharp pain it used to be, more like an ache that's just part of who I am. Would she have liked me? The question surprised both of them. Mason pulled back slightly to look at Scarlett. Yeah, he said finally. She would have. Sarah was all about people who gave a damn, who fought for things. She would have respected what you did with Hale. I hope so. I know so. And for what it's worth, I think she'd be happy that I found you. She told me once, right before she died, that she didn't want me to be alone forever. That Ellie needed to see what a real relationship looked like. Mason's voice went rough. So yeah, she'd approve. Scarlett kissed him, soft and grateful. Thank you for telling me that. They stayed on that couch until Ava came home, talking about everything and nothing, building the kind of intimacy that came from shared honesty. When Ava burst through the door full of energy and stories about her day, Scarlett felt something settle inside her. This was what mattered, not courtrooms or investigations or reputations, just this small moment of ordinary life. The meeting with Angela Chen happened in a coffee shop, neutral territory away from official buildings and prying eyes. We're moving forward with additional arrests, Angela said without preamble. 3 city council members, 5 building inspectors, 2 planning commissioners, and a judge, all connected to Hale's bribery network. Scarlett absorbed that. When? Next week. It's going to be a media circus. Every outlet in the country will cover it. And my name will come up. You're the whistleblower who started this whole thing. We'll do our best to protect you, but some exposure is inevitable. I understand. Angela slid a document across the table. I need you to review this. It's your official statement for the record. Make sure everything's accurate. Scarlett read through it carefully. Her timeline of events, her documentation of the fraud, her confrontation with Hale. It was all there, clinical and factual. It's accurate, she said, signing at the bottom. Good. One more thing. Hale's lawyers are claiming you fabricated evidence because you had a personal vendetta, that you were angry about being forced out as CEO and wanted revenge. That's ridiculous. I was forced out because I exposed the fraud. I know, but they're going to push that narrative hard. You need to be ready for it. Scarlett felt old anger rising. Of course Hale would try to paint her as vindictive. Of course he'd twist the truth to protect himself. Let them say whatever they want. I have documentation. I have witnesses. I have the truth. Truth doesn't always win in court. You know that. Then I'll make it win. Angela studied her for a moment.
You've changed since I first met you. At the grand jury, you were nervous, uncertain. Now you're... She trailed off. Now I'm what? Grounded, like you know exactly who you are and what you stand for. Scarlett thought about that. 6 months ago, she would have defined herself by her job title. CEO, developer, success story. Now those things felt hollow. Who was she now? A mother who showed up, a partner who tried, someone who'd chosen integrity over comfort and was still standing. I guess I finally figured out what matters, Scarlett said. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. Scarlett watched the news coverage from her living room, Ava beside her working on homework, oblivious to the magnitude of what was happening. Footage of officials being led out of City Hall in handcuffs, reporters shouting questions, lawyers issuing statements, and through it all, Gregory Hale's face, still defiant, still claiming innocence, still convinced his money and connections would save him. Scarlett's phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters wanting interviews, friends she hadn't heard from in months suddenly reaching out. Even a few board members from Whitmore Group probably trying to distance themselves from the scandal. She ignored all of it except one call. Martin. "Have you seen the news?" he asked. "Hard to miss it." Hale's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss. They're claiming prosecutorial overreach and tainted evidence. Will it work? No, but it'll delay things. We're looking at a trial date sometime next year. Next year, more months of this. More waiting, more fighting. I can handle it, Scarlett said, trying to convince herself as much as Martin. I know you can. But Scarlett, you need to prepare yourself. This trial is going to be brutal. They're going to put your entire life under a microscope. Your business decisions, your finances, your personal relationships, everything. Scarlett glanced at Ava, still bent over her math worksheet. Will they go after my daughter? They can't directly. But they might try to paint you as an unstable parent, someone who put her crusade ahead of her child's well-being. That's exactly what I was doing before all this, putting work ahead of Ava. I'm trying to fix that now. I know, but perception matters in court. We'll need to be strategic about how we present your life. After she hung up, Scarlett sat very still, processing. They were going to dissect her life, judge her choices, use her past mistakes against her. Mason arrived an hour later, letting himself in with the key she'd given him last week. That small gesture of trust still felt significant. Saw the news, he said, sitting beside her. You okay? Define okay. Still breathing, not curled up in a ball crying. Then yes, I'm okay. He pulled her close. Ava looked up from her homework and smiled at them, then went back to her math problems. She'd gotten used to seeing Mason around, had stopped asking when he was leaving and started assuming he'd stay for dinner. That shift felt important, like they were becoming something real. Martin says the trial will be brutal, Scarlett said quietly. They're going to attack everything about me. Let them. You know who you are, I know who you are, Ava knows who you are. That's all that matters. Is it? What if they win? What if Hale walks away from this? He won't. The evidence is overwhelming. But what if... Mason turned her face toward him. Stop. You can't control the outcome. You can only control what you do right now. And right now, you're here with your daughter, with me. That's enough. Scarlett wanted to argue, to plan for every contingency, to control something in a situation that felt completely out of control. Instead, she took a breath and let it go. You're right, she said. I know. I'm very wise. Don't push it. They ordered Thai food for dinner and ate on the living room floor because Ava insisted it was more fun that way. Mason helped with homework, explaining fractions in a way that actually made sense. Scarlett watched them work together and felt her chest go tight with emotion. This was what she'd been missing all those years. This ordinary, beautiful chaos of family life. After Ava went to bed, Mason stayed. They talked about his job, her nonprofit, Ellie's latest accomplishments at school. Normal couple things. The kind of conversation Scarlett had never had with James because she'd been too busy working. I'm different now, she said suddenly, than I was before, with my husband. I was terrible at being present, always thinking about the next deal, the next meeting, but with you, I'm here. Actually, here. What changed? I did. Losing everything made me realize what I was losing by chasing it. My daughter, my life, any chance at actual happiness. Mason kissed her forehead. I'm glad you figured it out, even if it took a catastrophe. Sometimes that's what it takes. Catastrophes. We can't see what we're doing wrong until everything falls apart. Speaking of catastrophes, Mason said carefully, I've been thinking about something. That sounds ominous.
Not ominous, just big.
He took a breath. My lease is up next month, and I've been thinking that maybe instead of renewing, Ellie and I could move somewhere else. Scarlett's heart started pounding. Where? Here. With you and Ava. If you want. The world seemed to stop. Scarlett stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. You want to move in together? I know it's fast. We've only been dating a few months, but we're here all the time anyway. The girls love each other, and He paused. I'm tired of leaving, of saying goodnight and walking away when all I want is to stay. Mason, you don't have to answer now. Think about it. Talk to Ava. Make sure it's what you want. But I needed to ask, to put it out there.
Scarlett's mind was racing. Moving in together was huge. It meant commitment. It meant blending their families permanently. It meant trusting that this thing between them was real and lasting. It terrified her. It also felt absolutely right. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes? Yes. Move in. You and Ellie. I want you here. Mason's face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen from him. Really? Really? Ava will be thrilled. And Scarlett felt tears threatening. I don't want you to leave either. I want this to be your home. Both of you. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Scarlett felt something lock into place. Some piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. They spent the rest of the night making plans. Which rooms would be whose? How to combine households? What to tell the girls? It was practical and mundane and absolutely perfect. When Mason finally left around midnight, Scarlett lay in bed, unable to sleep. Her life had become unrecognizable from what it had been a year ago. She'd lost her company, her reputation, her carefully constructed identity. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. A real relationship, a second chance with her daughter, a sense of purpose that didn't depend on profit margins. And soon, a family. The trial date was set for September, 7 months away. 7 months of preparation and waiting and worrying. But Scarlett found that with Mason and the girls around, the waiting felt manageable. Mason and Ellie moved in during March. It was chaotic and wonderful and harder than Scarlett expected. Suddenly, there were 4 people in her space, 4 different schedules to coordinate, 4 personalities negotiating how to live together. They had their first real fight 3 weeks in, over something stupid like whose turn it was to do dishes. Scarlett said something sharp. Mason retreated into silence. They spent an entire evening in different rooms, both too stubborn to apologize. Finally, Ava and Ellie staged an intervention. You guys need to stop being mad, Ava announced, hands on her hips in a perfect imitation of Scarlett's CEO stance. Fighting is dumb. Just say you're sorry and hug it out. Scarlett and Mason looked at each other across the living room and started laughing. The girls were right. It was dumb. I'm sorry, Scarlett said. I was being controlling about stupid things. I'm sorry too, Mason replied. I should have just talked to you instead of shutting down. They hugged it out, like Ava suggested, and Scarlett realized this was what real relationships looked like. Not perfect, not smooth, just 2 imperfect people figuring it out together. The nonprofit launched in April with a small ceremony and exactly 3 news reporters who bothered to show up. Scarlett didn't care. This wasn't about publicity. It was about doing the work. They'd secured funding for their first project, a 12-unit building in the Bronx, affordable housing built to proper safety standards. Mason would oversee all construction personally. No shortcuts. No substitutions. Everything done right. It would take 2 years to complete. It would house 12 families. It wouldn't make Scarlett rich or famous, but it would matter. She stood at the empty lot on opening day, Mason beside her, and thought about how far she'd come. From someone who judged people by their clothes and bank accounts to someone who actually gave a damn about building something real. You did it, Mason said. Actually made this happen. We did it. Couldn't have done any of this without you. I think you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Ava's birthday came in May. She turned 8, insisting on a small party at their apartment with just Ellie and 2 school friends. They ate pizza and cake and played games that made no sense to adults. Scarlett watched her daughter laugh with her friends, so different from the quiet, sad child she'd been a year ago. Ava was happy now, secure. She knew her mother would actually show up when she said she would. That mattered more than any business deal Scarlett had ever closed. Later, after the party ended and the other kids went home, Ellie pulled Scarlett aside. "Can I tell you something?" the little girl asked shyly. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm really glad we live here now, with you and Ava. I'm glad too. And I'm glad my daddy found you. He smiles more now, like he used to with my mommy." Scarlett felt tears burning. "Your mommy must have been wonderful." "She was. But I think she'd like you. Daddy says she wanted us to be happy, and we're happy now." Scarlett hugged this brave little girl who'd lost her mother too young and somehow still had room in her heart for new people. "I'll take good care of your daddy," she promised. "And you, always. I know, that's why I like you." Summer arrived, hot and sticky. The trial date loomed closer. Angela Chen prepped Scarlett for testimony, running through questions over and over until she could answer in her sleep. "Remember," Angela said, "Hale's lawyers will try to rattle you. They'll bring up every mistake you ever made. Don't take the bait. Stay calm and stick to the facts." "I can do that." "I know you can. You're one of the strongest witnesses I've ever worked with." The trial started on a Tuesday in early September. The courtroom was packed with reporters, spectators, and everyone involved in New York's construction industry. Gregory Hale sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking every inch the successful businessman. His lawyers were a team of high-priced talent designed to intimidate. Scarlett sat in the witness section, Mason beside her. He'd taken time off work to be there every day of the trial. Moral support, he called it. Scarlett called it love. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. Financial records, testimony from contractors and inspectors, the material violations Mason had documented, week after week of evidence building an overwhelming picture of corruption. Then it was Scarlett's turn to testify. She took the stand on a Thursday morning, her hands only slightly shaking. She'd worn a simple navy suit, professional but not flashy. Angela walked her through her story. The construction site discovery, the confrontation with Hale, the decision to go public. Then Hale's lead attorney, a man named Robert Chen, who'd built his career defending white-collar criminals, stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Whitmore, isn't it true that you were fired from your position as CEO? I was voted out by the board, yes. And you were angry about that, weren't you?" "I was disappointed. Disappointed enough to fabricate evidence against Gregory Hale? To destroy his reputation out of spite? No. I exposed real fraud that put children's lives at risk. Or you saw an opportunity to take down a competitor and advance your own interests." Angela objected. The judge sustained it, but the seed was planted. Chen continued, bringing up every questionable decision Scarlett had ever made as CEO. Times she'd cut costs, projects that ran over budget, employees she'd fired. He painted a picture of a ruthless businesswoman who'd do anything to win. Some of it was true. Scarlett had been ruthless. She'd made decisions she regretted now, but she hadn't fabricated evidence. And she wasn't backing down. "Mr. Chen," she said calmly when he paused for breath, "you can question my character all you want. But you can't question the documentation, the material samples, the photographs, the financial records. All of that exists independent of me. Gregory Hale committed fraud. Period." Chen tried a few more angles, but Scarlett held firm. After 2 hours, the judge called a recess. Scarlett stepped down from the witness stand on shaking legs. Mason was there immediately, taking her arm. "You did great," he said quietly. "I wanted to punch him." "I know. You held it together anyway. I'm proud of you." They walked out of the courthouse into September sunshine. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Scarlett ignored all of it, focusing on Mason's steady presence beside her. "How much longer?" she asked. "Trial could go another month, maybe 2. "I don't know if I can do this for 2 more months." "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know." "I don't feel strong." Strength isn't about feeling strong. It's about showing up even when you feel weak. You're doing that every day. The trial dragged on through September and into October. More witnesses, more evidence. More lawyers arguing over procedural details that made Scarlett want to scream. But slowly, the prosecution's case solidified. The bribery evidence was damning, the material fraud undeniable. Even Hale's expensive lawyers couldn't explain away bank records and signed approvals. The jury deliberated for 6 days. Scarlett spent those days trying to keep busy, working on the nonprofit, spending time with the girls, cooking elaborate meals she'd never had time to make before. Mason stayed close, sensing her anxiety even when she tried to hide it. On the 6th day, they got the call. The jury had reached a verdict. Scarlett and Mason rushed to the courthouse. The room was packed again, everyone wanting to witness the conclusion. Hale sat at the defense table looking smaller than before. The confidence had finally cracked. The jury foreman stood. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of tax evasion, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of bribery, guilty, guilty, guilty. 15 counts, 15 guilty verdicts. Gregory Hale's face went white. His lawyers immediately started talking about appeals. But it was over. Everyone in that courtroom knew it was over. Scarlett felt Mason's hand squeeze hers. She looked at him, saw tears in his eyes matching her own. They'd won. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed them. Scarlett gave a brief statement thanking the prosecutors and the jury. Then she and Mason escaped to a quiet bar 3 blocks away. They ordered whiskey and sat in a booth, not really talking, just processing. "It's really over," Scarlett said finally. "Yeah, it is. I thought I'd feel different, vindicated or relieved or something, but I just feel tired. That's normal. You've been fighting for a year. Your body doesn't know how to stop yet. How long until it figures it out? However long it takes. There's no schedule for this." Scarlett sipped her whiskey, feeling it burn down her throat. "Thank you. For everything. For standing with me through all of this. I told you I wasn't going anywhere. I know, but I'm still grateful." Mason raised his glass. "To justice and second chances and building something better from the wreckage." Scarlett clinked her glass against his. "To all of that." They sat in that bar for hours, finally allowing themselves to exhale. The trial was over. Hale was going to prison. The corruption had been exposed. Now came the hard part, figuring out what came next. Sentencing happened in November. Gregory Hale received 22 years in federal prison. At 62, it was essentially a life sentence. Scarlett watched him be led away in handcuffs and felt nothing. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just a bone-deep weariness that this had been necessary at all. The city officials who'd taken bribes received their own sentences. Some went to prison, others got probation and massive fines. All of them lost their positions and reputations. The entire system had been shaken up. New oversight committees formed, new regulations put in place. It wouldn't prevent all corruption, but it would make it harder. Scarlett's nonprofit completed the groundwork for their first building. Construction would start in January. It was small progress, but progress nonetheless. Life settled into something resembling normal. Mason went to work. Scarlett ran the nonprofit. The girls went to school. They had dinner together every night, all 4 of them crammed around the table, talking about their days. It was ordinary and precious, and everything Scarlett had been missing. December arrived with the first snow. Christmas was coming, and for the first time in years, Scarlett actually looked forward to it. Not the obligation of corporate parties and client gifts, but real celebration with people she loved. She and Mason took the girls to pick out a tree, arguing playfully about size until they settled on one that barely fit in the elevator. They decorated it together, making hot chocolate and playing music too loud. Ava and Ellie strung popcorn garlands that fell apart immediately. Mason hung ornaments while Scarlett directed from the couch, occasionally being hit with popcorn when she got too bossy. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely perfect. That night, after the girls went to bed, Scarlett and Mason sat in the dark looking at the tree lights. "I've been thinking," Mason said quietly. "Dangerous. Seriously, I've been thinking about us. About this." He gestured around the apartment, meaning the life they'd built. Scarlett's heart started pounding. And I know we've only been together less than a year. I know it's fast, but I also know I don't want to waste time pretending I don't know what I want. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Scarlett's breath caught. "I'm not asking you to marry me," Mason said quickly. "Not yet. But I'm asking if you'd want to, eventually, when we're ready, because I'm ready to promise you that I'm in this for the long haul, however long that is. Scarlett took the box with shaking hands. Inside was a simple gold ring, nothing flashy or expensive, just solid and real and perfectly them. It's a promise ring, Mason explained. My way of saying I'm serious about this, about us, about building a life together. Scarlett looked at him, this man who'd saved her daughter and stood beside her through the worst year of her life and made her believe in second chances. Yes, she said, eventually, when we're ready, yes. Mason slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. They kissed there in the glow of Christmas lights, two broken people who'd found each other and chosen to be whole together. Spring came again. The construction on the nonprofit's first building progressed steadily. Scarlett visited the site every week, walking through the framework with Mason, watching something good rise from the foundation of everything that had fallen apart. Ava turned 9 with a party in Central Park, surrounded by friends who actually knew her. Not the polished children of business associates, but real kids who liked her for who she was. Ellie's health had stabilized with proper medical care. No emergency room visits in 6 months. Her lungs were getting stronger. She was thriving. Mason proposed for real on a Saturday afternoon in late April, nothing fancy or orchestrated. Just the two of them on their building's rooftop, looking out over the city. I love you, he said simply. Will you marry me? Yes, Scarlett answered just as simply. They told the girls that night. Ava and Ellie screamed with excitement, immediately planning the wedding down to ridiculous details like whether the flower girl dresses should be pink or purple. The wedding happened in June in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. No press, no publicity, just people who mattered, celebrating something real. Scarlett wore a simple white dress. Mason wore a suit that actually fit him properly. Ava and Ellie served as flower girls, arguing about the bouquets until the last minute. It was imperfect and beautiful, and everything Scarlett never knew she wanted. When the officiant asked if she took Mason to be her husband, Scarlett thought about the journey that had led her here. From the woman who judged a soaked father in the rain to someone who understood that worth had nothing to do with money or status. I do, she said clearly. Mason's vows were simple. I promise to stand beside you, to help carry what you can't carry alone, to build something real with you, to love you and Ava for as long as I'm breathing. Scarlett's vows were equally straightforward. I promise to show up, to be present, to choose this over everything else, to love you and Ellie with everything I have. They sealed it with a kiss while Ava and Ellie cheered. The reception was in their apartment, nothing fancy, pizza and wine and music and laughter. The kind of celebration that mattered because it was real. Late in the evening, Scarlett found herself on the balcony looking out at Manhattan. The city glowed the way it always did, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out within it. Mason joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. Happy? He asked. Incredibly. You? More than I thought possible. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe. Can I tell you something? Scarlett said eventually. Always. A year and a half ago, I had everything I thought I wanted. Power, success, recognition, and I was miserable. Now I have almost none of those things, and I've never been happier. What changed? I figured out what actually matters. It's not complicated. It's just easy to forget when you're chasing the wrong things. And what matters? Scarlett thought about it. About Ava's laugh. About Ellie calling her mom for the first time last week. About Mason's steady presence. About building homes people could actually afford to live in. This, she said simply, the people you love. The work that means something. Showing up for what's real instead of what looks good. Mason kissed her temple. That's wisdom. That's survival. I had to lose everything to learn it. Was it worth it? Scarlett looked through the balcony door at their small apartment full of people she loved. Ava and Ellie dancing to music too loud. Friends laughing. A life that was messy and imperfect and absolutely real. Yes, she said. Every bit of it. Inside, someone turned up the music. Ava called for them to come dance. Mason took Scarlett's hand and led her back inside, back to the celebration, back to their life. As they danced in their crowded living room, Scarlett thought about the man she'd judged that rainy November night. How she'd looked at his worn jacket and tired eyes and decided he didn't belong. How completely wrong she'd been. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones quietly carrying their burdens with dignity. Sometimes worth has nothing to do with wealth. Sometimes the best things in life come from having everything else stripped away until you're forced to see what actually matters. Scarlett had learned those lessons the hard way, but she'd learned them. And now she had a life built on truth instead of appearances, on love instead of ambition, on presence instead of performance. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was so much better. The music played, the girls laughed. Mason spun her around the living room, both of them graceless and happy. And outside, the city kept glowing, indifferent and eternal. While inside this small apartment, 4 people who'd found each other through chaos and choice celebrated the simple miracle of being home.